Well, good afternoon. Phil Tenser joining you from the 7 News newsroom. It is now 2:17 by our clocks here in the newsroom. That means that just about 18 minutes ago, just before 2 o'clock, we heard from Arapahoe County Court, from the court system, that the jury has completed their final set of verdict forms, 24 final decisions, and they literally could be the final decisions. They could be the end, they could mark the end of this defendant's life. They could be putting him to death. I'm going to take just a moment and lean down here because right before that announcement, I also realized that the court had posted new documents from this deliberation phase, and I wanted to have a moment to pull those up, and I'll be honest, I have not had a chance to read those yet, what with the activating of all of this equipment that we have in order to be able to speak to you like we are now. But here we are is, oh gosh, this is a notice regarding, Andrew, you want to put that on the screen there for a sec? Let's see what this actually says here. This may just be a notice of how they labeled the document itself. I'm hoping, judging by how long it took to load, that there will actually be instructions here. And it does appear there are. So here are the instructions that guided the jury through the deliberations that they just completed. So instruction number 1, in this draft they are not numbered, so we'll have to keep track as we go. Instruction number 1 is an instruction about having instructions, as you might remember. Instruction number 2, follow the law that the court provides. These decisions may well be the most important and serious decisions you will ever be asked to make, and I certainly can't think of any reason to disagree with that statement. Here we have the final verdicts are not dictated by law. The outcome at the end of the trial or any other previous phase, each of you will be called upon to deliberate and make decisions based on your individual reasoned moral judgment. Now they are being put face to face for the first time with the idea that they are deciding whether this gunman is going to be imprisoned for life without the possibility of parole or whether he is going to be put to death. He has been found guilty of 24 counts of murder in the first degree. That's 2 for each of the 12 people who were killed. In phase 3 of the sentencing hearing, there is no burden of proof. Therefore, neither party has the burden to prove anything to you, that is, to you, the juror. This rule applies regardless of whether a party chose to present evidence or not present evidence, as the defense did not during phase 3. This defines reasonable doubt. There is no requirement that you explain or justify to your fellow jurors your reasoned moral judgment. So, in this situation, this instruction is explaining that the jury, they have to either agree on the death penalty or agree on life in prison. If they don't agree unanimously on either one, then the gunman would be sentenced to life in prison by default. But throughout the process, while they do have to deliberate and they do have to talk, they do not need to explain their individual reasoned moral judgments. Jurors are allowed to consider sympathy or mercy. When a person is sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, it means the person will not ever be paroled. Sentencing of death is by lethal injection. The death penalty is entitled, the fact that they're pursuing the death penalty in this case is not something they're allowed to deliberate on or consider. Treat the defendant as a uniquely individual human being. Do not be influenced by prejudice or bias of any sort. Instructed that there are 2 types of aggravation. An explanation here of something we learned very much about during phase 1 and 2 They may consider even non-statutory aggravators here. And this list goes on. It is quite long. I will make sure during the next half hour that this gets posted and available for any of you on the denverchannel.com or the 7 News app. I will put all of these documents into our online library and make those all available for you. I just want to scroll to the bottom here before Andrew leaves this screen behind to see if there is a sample verdict form for us. There is. So here's our sample verdict form, ladies and gentlemen. The jurors must each sign their names here on these 12 lines, with the foreperson being on the 12th, in order to be unanimously convinced, or in order to show they are unanimously convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that the appropriate sentence is a death sentence. If they could not agree, the foreperson will sign this line and he will go to life in prison without parole. And if they do agree unanimously against the death penalty, the foreperson would sign on this line. They only need to sign their individual names if they all unanimously agree on the death penalty. So I will make sure that that document's online. In the meantime, Andrew and I are going to get ready now. We have a whole series of replays that we've planned for you, all from Phase 3, the testimonies of the 13 people who spoke about the 12 who were killed back on July 20th of 2012. In each of these, we hear emotional, heartbreaking stories, and we are going to start today with the sound from Mr. Tom Sullivan, father of Alex, who was killed. Someone, actually the only father in the group of those who testified. Of course, there were others on the original agenda, but the judge asked the attorneys to keep those things down to just one witness per victim of murder, except, of course, for Veronica, the 6-year-old. Her grandfather and her mother were both allowed to testify. So we'll start right now playing Mr. Sullivan's testimony. In just a few minutes, we're going to start our plan of making periodic updates. We'll have Jennifer Kovaleski here hosting those with new information as the day develops. And then, of course, at 5 o'clock, we'll have the verdict as it's read live in Arapahoe County Court. In the meantime, here's Mr. Tom Sullivan's testimony from just 2 days ago.
Mr. Orman, you may proceed with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, what name do you go by?
Tom.
Your middle name?
Yes.
You were the father of one of the homicide victims in this case. Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury which one that was?
I'm the father of Alex Sullivan.
Can we please put up previously admitted exhibit 4678, ma'am? Who is that?
That's my son, Alex.
Thank you, ma'am. And what was his legal name?
Alex Matthew Sullivan.
What did his friends call him?
His friends called him Sully.
I want to ask you some questions about your son, about the impact that the defendant's crime had on you and your family. But first, I want to ask you to tell us about Alex Sullivan. What kind of a man was he?
Well, I mean, he was great. I mean, he was, maybe every father's dream. I mean, as a man, you want a son, and Alex was my son, and he was also my best friend. So, that was a two-banger. That was, everything, and so we were able to do so much, together. There was never anywhere that I went. When you have a child, sometimes it changes you, and I can honestly tell you that it didn't change me because I took him everywhere. There wasn't anywhere I couldn't go without taking him.
To tell us, if you could describe his personality.
Well, he was empathetic. He was compassionate. He was funny. He was, maybe the life of the party, but he was also one of those who, if you were having a bad day, if things weren't working out for you, he had that sense, and he could come over to you and make you feel better.
Let me ask you a little bit about you. What do you do for a living, sir?
I'm a retired postal worker, and presently I'm on the executive board with the Colorado AFL-CIO.
A union man.
Yes, very much so.
Your son, what did he do for a living?
At the time, he was working at the Red Robin. He was a bartender and was getting ready to go into some type of management training. And he was also working at the movie tavern as a bartender there. But in both places he had worked, he was trying to get the whole impact of the food service industry. So he had worked as a chef, he had worked in the back, he had been a server, working as a bartender. He was trying to learn the whole business.
Where did he grow up? What town did he grow up in?
Oh, in Aurora. Yeah, we've lived here our entire lives.
Where did he go to high school?
Grandview. I believe he was in the first class that went all 4 years at Grandview.
Was faith important to you and your family?
Very much, yeah.
How about
Maybe even more than I had thought it was. It was just what we did.
How about to Alex, your son?
Judge, can we approach, please?
Yes. Mr. Orman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Sullivan, I think where we were was I was asking you about the role that faith played in your son's life.
We towards the end, we were both my wife Terry and I were both brought up as Catholics, and of course when the kids were born we both had them baptized. But then it kind of fell off, and we didn't. As we would go to church occasionally, we didn't follow through with the rest of their sacraments. So Alex had never had the opportunity to get confirmed and then be able to receive his first communion. So there was two of his grandparents back in Rochester had passed away, and we had gone back there for their funerals. And my wife has a big family.
Judge, I'm going to object for.
Thank you. You were talking about this adult event that happened with your son. Was he able to take communion then?
Not initially. And
Okay, let me just ask you a few pointed questions here. As a result of that, did he decide to invest himself in his religious faith as an adult?
yes,
And what did he do to do that?
he began to go to an adult education class at St. Michael's and got himself confirmed, and then had the ability to receive First Communion.
And how old was he when he got confirmed?
26.
You mentioned your family. Did your son have a sister growing up?
Yes, Sister Megan.
And what was the age difference between them?
They were Irish twins. They're 16 months apart.
Is that a thing? I've never heard that before.
Yes, it is a thing.
And anybody else in the household then, other than your wife and his sister Megan and Alex?
It's just the four of us.
I want to ask you a few brief questions about the relationship that your son had with his sister Megan. Can you describe that for the jury, the relationship they had as brother and sister?
Well, Alex was Megan's first best friend. They were together all of the time. We joke that Megan didn't have to speak until she was 5 because Alex did all of the talking for her. We have neighbors that still refer to her as my sister Megan because that's the only way they ever heard her name was because if Megan needed anything or anybody spoke to her, Alex was right there next to him to tell them what it is that she needed.
How about his mother? Can you tell me about the relationship between Alex and his mother?
Well, it was her first. He's our first child. So there was always, that love and care. And he got a lot of his empathy and compassion, from her. And as he kept getting bigger and bigger, he would overwhelm her. And that's one of the things that, is gone from her, is the big hugs that she would always get from Alex to let her know that things would be okay.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness with 3 marked exhibits, would have been marked for identification as People's Exhibit 4675, 4676, and 4677.
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan, I'm going to ask you to take a look at those and tell me if you recognize the person or people in those photographs.
Yes, I do.
And do those photographs all show your son, Alex Sullivan?
Yes, they do.
And do they show the way he looked around the year of his death?
Yes, he's smiling in every single one of them.
And the last one, 4677, there's another person in there. Who's that?
That's me.
Your Honor, I move to admit 4675, 4676, and 4677.
Is there any objection, Ms. Brady?
Nothing additional.
All right, based on my prior rulings, P-TR-4675 through 4677 inclusive are admitted and may be published.
Can we please put up 4675, ma'am? It looks like maybe it was taken on a golf course. Did your son play golf?
He had worked at a golf course for a while, but that's very possible, yeah.
And 4676?
Yeah, it looks like he was at a luau.
And 4677?
That's a birthday picture of us getting together. I don't believe that's an alcoholic beverage.
Okay. Thank you. You can take that down, ma'am. I want to talk to you about your relationship with your son. And you talked about how close you were with him, but actually, let me switch. Before I get to that. Back in July of 2012, was your son a married man?
Yes, he was.
And a wife named Cassandra?
Yes.
Did you have an opportunity over the years to see them together?
Yes.
And what kind of husband was he to her?
He was a very good husband, protective, providing.
I want to now ask about your relationship with your son. Were travel and shared activities between you and your son Alex important to you?
Very much.
Can you give us some examples of where you traveled together with him?
We went on road trips all the time. We went to 2 Final Fours. The first one was in Indianapolis, and the second one was in Atlanta. We went to the Rose Bowl to see Notre Dame play UCLA, so we drove from here to the coast for that. We used to go to California every Labor Day weekend to do a sports card memorabilia show with my brother Mike, and so we would do that. It was generally him and I, and then we'd go to ball games and different things like that, and going to Grandma and Grandpa's, running back and forth from there, and also seeing some basketball games. And then in the later years, he got to go, on our Vegas trips.
Vegas trips. Can you tell me about those Vegas trips?
It was 1994.
I'm going to object 401 and 403.
Will counsel please approach for a moment? Mr. Orman, you may proceed.
Thank you. Sir, I want to ask you some questions about the trips to Vegas. When did your son start going with you to Vegas?
As soon as he was 21, although I believe I took him prior to, just to kind of get him warmed up.
When he turned 21, and how old was he when he died?
27. It was his 27th birthday.
When he turned 21 and you started taking him on these trips to Vegas, did you and he, did you have to show him the ropes of how to gamble and stuff like that?
Yes.
And did he learn how to do that?
Yes.
And then, did you take him there every year thereafter?
Every year we went for Super Bowl. We would get together with a group of my friends, and then as they had sons and their sons became of legal age, they started bringing their sons as well.
Since the incident at the theater on July 20th of 2012, for the 2013 and 2014 Super Bowls, have you been able to take your son to Las Vegas?
No, I have not.
And do you miss him because he can't be there?
We have an empty seat at our table, and there's a glass of Jameson sitting in front of it.
Was that what he liked to drink?
We all do.
Was there anywhere in particular that you and your son had talked about going together that meant a lot to you that you can't do now?
We had always talked about going to Ireland.
Sullivan, is that a Welsh name?
It's Irish.
Did you and your son have any interests in music together?
Yes, we did.
Were there any particular bands that you liked to go together to when they came to town?
U2 is our favorite.
When you would go to U2 concerts with your son, was there any special moments that you can remember from those concerts that relate to you and your son, Alex?
I had taught both of my kids about their Irish heritage, and when they would sing the song "Sunday Bloody Sunday," that meant a lot to us, and we would generally stand up and sing that song together, whenever they played it.
Have you been to a U2 concert since?
U2 came on June the 7th and played at the Pepsi Center. And this year when they sang Sunday, Bloody Sunday, I sat there and sang the song, alone.
I want to switch what we've been talking about and ask you about the morning of July 20th of 2012. But first I want to ask you, had you ever been to the Century 16 Theater with your son Alex before this happened?
Yes, we've been there several times.
Since this has happened, have you been back to the theater?
Yes, we have.
Do you do anything to commemorate your son when you go?
Well, we make sure that the shows that we see are in Theater I, which was previously Theater 9.
Judge, I'm going to object 401 and 403.
Overruled.
What do you do when you go to Theater I, which used to be Theater 9?
And we go up and we sit in Alex's row, and we're sitting in row 12, and we leave seat 12 open for Alex, and the other three of us, or if it's just me, we sit next to him.
I want to go back to when you're working at the post office. I want to go back to the early morning of July 20th of 2012. What post office were you working at?
I work at the time I was at the Altura Post Office, which is at the corner of Colfax and Chambers.
What did you do for the post office?
At that point, I was the opening clerk. I was the through parcels.
What was your shift?
4 a.m. to 12:30.
Do you remember what time you got up in the morning on July 20th?
My alarm has been set for 2:40 a.m. For up to that time, probably the previous 7 years.
So
2:40 a.m. is when I wake up.
Before you left the house to go to work, did you get any news about the incident at the theater?
My normal routine would be to get up, get showered, changed, come downstairs, make coffee, get my lunch together, have something to eat, and then I would turn on the TV, generally on SportsCenter, to get the scores, because I'd been asleep since 7 o'clock, so I didn't know how anything ended up. But that day, we had been watching apparently a news program, and when I turned the TV on, the lights were flashing, and they were out in front of the Century 16 Theater.
Now, had you known that your son had gone to the movies that night?
I had an inkling that he was going. He certainly should, would have gone, but I had no idea what theater he was going to.
Did you do anything at that point to try to contact your son, Alex?
Well, I initially watched some of the report, and then, his mom was upstairs sleeping, so I didn't want to wake her to tell her about it, so I called Alex, and his phone rang, and then I got his voicemail, and I then said, there's been a shooting. I just want to make sure you're okay. I assume you're on some kind of a sleep mode here. When you get this, give me a call so I can tell your mom. And then I wished him happy birthday.
Do you remember when one of the officers testified about the cell phones going off when he was in the theater?
Yes.
Based on what you know, would one of those calls have been you?
Yeah, that was me every half hour from 3:15 until probably 6:30 when I got the message from my wife, Terry.
Now, what time did you got to work that day?
I started at 4.
At some point, did you get a phone call?
Yes, Terry, my wife called me about, it was approximately 6:30
In the morning.
in the morning, right?
And as a result of that phone call, did you leave work and go somewhere else and take other actions?
Right. I initially was trying to calm her down, letting her know that I had been calling Alex all morning and he's just sleeping and we'll hear from him. And she screamed out over the phone that Alex had been shot. And then she said, get to Gateway. And so Gateway is just down the street from where I worked, and jumped in the car and cried the whole way.
That's Gateway High School.
Gateway High School. Mm-hmm.
How long do you think it took you to get to Gateway High School?
Oh, less than 5 minutes.
Did you meet anyone at Gateway that you already knew? I mean, were your family there, friends of your son, anything like that?
I had no idea what I was running into, and I recall having, reaching and pulling my driver's license out because I didn't know who they were letting in. And I ran in through the door with my driver's license, telling them who I was. And the first person I met was Carol O'Shea and I come to find out she was with the victim advocates for Aurora Police Department.
Did you, at that point, at that early hour in the morning, get any information about your son when you went to Gateway High School?
No.
At some point then that morning, did you decide that you were going to go to area hospitals to see if your son was there?
Yes.
Before you did that, did you take any action to try to get the public or other people to help you get information about your son?
We had printed out a photo of him similar to one of these, and when I said to Carol, I think I need to go to the hospitals because they're not giving out any information to someone else, she asked if I'd wanted a police officer to take me, and I said that would be great. And we walked outside, and the police officer had to go back in for a reason, and I was standing out there, and I saw all of the media people on the side, and I said to Carson, one of Alex's friends.
Judge, I'm going to object to hearsay.
It's not offered for the truth of the matter asserted, Your Honor. There is no truth of the matter asserted. It's simply offered to show what he did to find his son.
Overruled.
And I said to Carson, I'm going to put these people to work. And so I ran over to the mass of media there holding up Alex's picture. And I said, I can't find him. I said, I don't know where he is. And I said, would you please help me? And I said, I think he was in the theater, but if anybody, please have him call me. And I shouted out my phone number, and they started to pull me away. And I told him, I said, it's his birthday, for God's sakes.
After that, did you actually go to some local hospitals?
We went to 2 different hospitals.
Which ones did you go to?
We went to Aurora South, and then while we were on our way to university, we were directed to go to Swedish, and that's where I went last.
In Swedish, that's in Inglewood?
Yes, yes.
What time do you think you got to Swedish?
Judge, can we approach, please?
Yes. Mr. Orman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, I want to ask you about Swedish. What time did you get there?
Must have been shortly before 10 o'clock.
And did you find out that your son wasn't there?
Yes.
And at some point, did someone say, hey, let me call a local hospital, see if he's anywhere, you don't need to drive around?
Yes.
And after that, did you find out he wasn't at any local hospital?
I was told he hadn't been at any of the, I think it was 9 hospitals.
At that point, did you conclude that he was probably gone?
I decided at that point that I needed to get back to Gateway High School because I needed to tell his mother and his sister that he was still in the movie theater and that he wasn't going to be walking out.
I want to flash forward a little bit. At some point, you must have received official confirmation about the death of your son, is that right?
8:10 p.m.
And where did that happen?
At Aurora South.
And why were you there?
Alex's wife had been admitted to the hospital.
And who was with you?
My wife and my daughter and about 25 of our dearest friends.
Did you and your son have any sort of particular inside way that you would say goodbye to each other?
Yes, we did.
What was that?
I would say War Eagle.
Is that associated with the Auburn University football team?
Yes, it is.
Did you go to Auburn?
No, I did not.
How'd you get that?
I was watching obviously an Auburn football game one day, and there's apparently a code word that you have to use in the state of Alabama to move around because there's apparently another school in the state of Alabama that also plays football. And so you say War Eagle, and if the person says War Eagle back to you, then you're able, to move on.
Did you adopt that with your son?
Yes, I did.
I want to go to July 21st, the day after. Did you think it was important to see your son that day?
Yes.
And did you do that?
Yes, I did.
Did that happen at the coroner's office?
Yes.
When you saw him at the coroner's office, did you say anything to him?
Well, I was taken into the room to see him, and I let him know that I was okay and that we were all right, and that I would go back to tell his sister and his mom that they would get to see the same Alex they had seen before. And as I walked out the door, I turned back to him and said, War Eagle.
Do you miss that? Being able to say that?
Yes.
I just have a few more questions for you, Mr. Sullivan. After your son died, was there a viewing for him?
Yes, at the Horan and McConty there on Dartmouth and Parker.
And while you were there, did you see any people from your son's schooling or anything like that come to the viewing?
Yes.
Section 401, 403.
Overruled.
Who did you see? And you don't need to give
Yes.
me names, but the types of people that you saw.
Second,
there.
third grade teachers came by. T-ball coach, his wrestling coach, most of his wrestling team from Grandview. Of course, the people that we buy our cigars from, they came by.
Was there a funeral?
Yes,
Who gave the eulogy?
at St. Michael's, I did.
Do you know how many people came?
Alex outdrew the Archbishop. You couldn't have fit another person in there.
talked a little bit before about the relationship between your son, Alex Sullivan, and his sister, Megan. What impact has the crime had on Megan? And
Well-
I'm not going to say Megan Sullivan because I'm not sure of her last name now. So what is her last name now?
It's hyphened now, Sullivan Jenks, because Alex was the last of the line of Sullivans from mine, and so we got the approval from the other side that they could hyphen it, so the Sullivan name will still live on.
What has been the impact on Megan for this crime?
Well, she had a wedding on just Saturday, and her brother wasn't there. She had always planned for her brother to be with her through all of the important days of her life, and he wasn't there.
How about the impact on your son's, Alex's mom? What has the impact been on her?
Well, Terry and I she's been my girlfriend since I was 12 years old, so we've been together for a really long time. And in the past 3 years, we've had conversations that I couldn't even fathom, having had before. And we're much more watchful of each other. There's too many of those where you just look at one another and, what? And that's how you communicate.
How about you? I mean, you've talked about not being able to go to Las Vegas or do singing Sunday, Bloody Sunday at a U2 concert, but the personal impact on you. What personal impact has this had on you?
Well, I think I'm one of those guys, one of those who has that Peter Pan syndrome, one of the guys who never wants to grow up. And I got to do that for a long time, and then I think Terry kind of got tired of it, but then Alex came along, so I had somebody new to do that. So as we, grew older, we never had to grow up. But on the morning that he was murdered, I was forced then to have to grow up. And so from this point on, all I'm doing is getting older.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Ms. Brady, do you have any cross-examination for Mr. Sullivan?
No, sir.
And the jury does not appear to have any questions. May Mr. Sullivan be released from his subpoena?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, sir.
All right, Mr. Sullivan, thank you.
Thank you.
You just got done hearing emotional testimony from Tom Sullivan, whose son Alex died in the shooting. For those of you just joining us, we have gotten news that the verdict will be read at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. It took the jury about 6.5 hours to reach their decision. This is phase 3 of the death penalty phase, so this is the final phase. This is their 4th deliberation. I want to tell you a little bit about what happened this morning. We heard from the jury at around 9:10 this morning. They sent a note to the judge saying that they had a question. They asked for a TV and a DVD player. They wanted to see the footage from the very graphic crime scene that was never released to the public. It's very graphic, was taken shortly after the theater shooting happened on July 20th of 2012. They were able to only see that video for 50 minutes, so the judge gave them 50 minutes and the video was actually 45 minutes, so they took some time to look at that. The judge approved that at about 10:56 this morning, and then a short time later, obviously, they came back 6.5 hours after they started deliberating with their decision. We don't know what that is, but it will be read at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I do want to go ahead and go back and kind of talk a little bit about the jury. So, Andrew, I'm going to switch over here on this screen to kind of just show you the jury makeup. And as you can see, there were 9 women and 3 men that are on the jury, and these are the same men and women who convicted the defendant on 165 counts relating to the July 20th, 2012 shooting in the Aurora movie theater. Now, 12 people were killed and 70 others were injured. Those 12 jurors voted unanimously and repeatedly to move forward through the 3 steps of the death penalty decision process. Now, this is the last phase in that process where they will determine life in prison or the death penalty. This deliberation, however, though, is the first time that their decision could result directly in death by lethal injection. Now, in phase 3 of this trial, prosecutors called 13 witnesses who tearfully spoke about the victims who were killed. Each of the 11 adult victims had a spouse, a parent, or a sibling testify about their lives. And just yesterday, we had the closing arguments, and each side had about 40 minutes for their primary arguments and 20 minutes for their optional rebuttals. But as you can see here, we've got the jurors kind of numbered here. They're, mostly Caucasian women, 9 women. Obviously, there are some alternates as well. This has been the same jury throughout this whole process, and they have moved, relatively quickly. They've made their decisions. Each time they've made their decision, it's taken less time, except for in this most recent case. For example, their first deliberation, where they found the defendant guilty on 165 counts, took them about 13 hours. Their second took about 8 hours, and the third lasted less than 3 hours. This latest deliberation took about 6.5 hours. Now, if we want to go ahead and exit out of this, we are, sharing with you some of the key testimony, very emotional testimony from phase 3 of the trial, where we heard, as I mentioned, from each of the adult victims who had a spouse or a parent who, spoke about the person they lost and what that life meant to them. We also heard from the grandfather and the mother from the 12th and youngest victim, which was 6-year-old Veronica Moser Sullivan. Right now, though, I want to go ahead and play for you. This is testimony from, let me get my notes here. This is testimony from Sierra Cowden. She sat next to her father, Gordon Cowden, and shared an armrest with him. Her sister was injured, but her father was fatally wounded. Let's take a listen.
Please tell us your full name and spell your first, middle, and last names.
Sierra Camille Cowden, Sierra Cierra, Camille Camille, Cowden Cowden.
Ms. Teach McGuire, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Cowden. How old are you, Sierra?
19?
Are you in school?
Yes.
Where do you go to school?
CU Boulder.
Who is Gordon Cowden to you?
My dad.
If I could please have a photograph that's been previously introduced, 4716. Could you please tell a jury who that is?
That's my dad, Gordon Cowden.
Thank you very much. Where was your dad born?
Waco, Texas.
What are the names of your dad's parents?
George Cowden and Molly Cowden, but she used to be Molly Waldrop.
And did your dad have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, he has 3. George Cowden, Graves Cowden, and his sister Galen Kendall. Used to be Galen Cowden.
Where does that part of the family live?
Texas.
And is your grandfather and your uncle here today?
Yeah.
Where did your dad end up growing up after he was born?
Some in Waco, Dallas, Austin, just in Texas.
Did your dad go to college?
Yes.
Do you know what college he went to?
He went to Baylor University for a year, then he graduated from Howard Payne University in 1984.
Do you know what he studied?
He got a general business degree with a minor in history.
Was your dad kind of a World War II buff growing up? Did he make you and the kids, your brothers and sisters, talk about World War II all the time?
Mostly we just listened to him.
And if you could pull the microphone a little bit closer to you, Sierra, sorry, thanks. If you could just kind of, it's almost like you have to be touching it. Did your dad play any sports in college?
Yeah, he played on a basketball team called the Rejects, and he played like some badminton and racquetball.
Your dad wasn't the tallest basketball
No,
player.
he was pretty little, but he was really good at it for kind of a littler guy.
What did your dad do after he graduated from college?
He lived in Austin. He became a real estate appraiser.
And did your dad end up getting married?
Yes.
Who did your dad marry?
At the time she was Melissa Rouse, but then she became Melissa Cowden.
Is that your mom?
Mm-hmm.
Did your dad have any children?
Yes.
Obviously, other than you.
Yes, he had
How many other children did he have?
3 other kids besides me. My oldest sister, Christian Cowden, who's 24 now. My brother, Weston Cowden, who's 23. Sorry. My sister, Brooke Cowden, who's 20.
Where do all your siblings live now?
Brooke and I still live in Colorado. Weston lived in Kings Point, New York for a while, but he's back home now, and he's going to be going to the Army soon, so he'll have to go to Missouri for training. And my oldest sister, Christian, is in Guatemala serving in the Peace Corps.
Are you and your brothers and sisters close?
Yes.
Where did you and your brother and sisters grow up?
All of us were born in Texas, and we lived there till I was like 4 or 5, but for me, mostly I grew up in Colorado, in Denver, and Aurora.
Did your parents eventually divorce?
Yes.
How much time did you spend with your mother and how much time did you spend with your father?
Like, legally it was split, so that I was with my dad 40% of the time and my mom 60% of the time, but a lot of times it just worked out that it was kind of 50-50 between them.
Did you have a family pet when you lived with your dad?
Yes. We had a yellow lab named Chula.
Your Honor, if I may approach the witness with what's been marked as People's Exhibits 4715 and 4714.
You may.
Ms. Cowen, do you recognize the people in this photograph?
Yes.
Do they fairly and accurately represent your family?
Yes.
All right, this time I'd move forward to admit People's Exhibit 4714 and 4715.
Any objection?
Nothing further.
All right, based on my previous rulings, P-TR-4714 and 4715 are admitted and may be published.
Thanks. If I could please have 4715? Could you please tell the jury who everyone in those photographs are?
To the left of my dad is me holding Ditto, and then to the right is my sister Brooke, then Christian, then Weston.
Who's next to you?
My dad. My dad's in the middle there.
And who's Ditto to the family?
Ditto was the guide dog that me and Brooke raised, trained.
And if I could please have 4714. All right, and who's in this photograph with your dad?
That's my dad with Chula, our dog.
Did you and your family have a special game that you guys played with your dad and Chula?
Yeah, we would play hide and seek, and like Chula was always just like enamored by our dad. Like, she just loved him so much. When we played hide and seek, we'd just let her run off and find him, and she would just get to him right away, give him away.
Is Chula still with the family?
No, she died years ago.
Was that the only time you ever saw your father cry?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Did you have special road trips that you took with your dad?
Yeah, we went on a lot of... Sorry. We drove down to Austin a lot.
And who were you going to visit when you drove down to Austin?
Like our grandparents and the rest for external family.
Did you take any trips any other places in the country?
Sorry.
Oh, take a moment. There's some water up there if you need it.
Yeah, like, we drove up to New York, and, like, the trips to Texas, we would go a lot, like, in the summer and around Christmas.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about your dad's personality and character?
Very, like, funny, charming, patient, kind, honest.
Was there...
Sorry.
Was there a time that you played a family game called Drowning that kind of demonstrates a little bit about your dad's
Yeah.
caringness?
When we lived at the Breaker Apartments in Denver, there was like this little community pool, and my siblings and I would play this stupid game where one of us would pretend to drown and someone had to be the lifeguard and had to like jump in and save them. And like my sister Christian and I were playing, and the way Brooke recalls it is that we like weren't really including her in the game, so she just went ahead and like floated in the water and pretended that she had drowned. And my dad was barbecuing our dinner for us, and he looked up and thought that she had like actually drowned, so like he screamed her name and jumped the entire length of the pool, and without like taking off his like nice leather shoes and jeans, he just like jumped in to save her. And like she just looked up and was like, "Dad?" Like, 'cause she was just playing. And then like after that, Brooke was like very like embarrassed and upset with herself. And my dad like got out and jumped back in again to make her feel better and just swam around with us in his clothes.
So we spent the rest of the evening with
Yeah.
you swimming in his clothes.
Yeah.
Was there a time that you guys were driving and you came across some prairie dogs?
Yeah. I think.
Your Honor,
Ms. Tish McGuire, you may proceed.
Thank you. Was there a time that you guys were driving with your dad in a car and you came across a prairie dog that helps demonstrate to the jury the caring nature of your father towards you and your sisters?
Yes, my sister Brooke and I were in the car with our dad. I think we were driving like either to the park or to dinner, and we pulled up at a red light. There were like one or two cars in front of us, and our dad noticed like a little prairie dog on the sidewalk, and he was kind of going into the street. My dad was like, "Oh my gosh, that prairie dog's gonna get hit by a car," and so he like put the car in park and jumped out and ran around and like herded it back towards, away from the cars, and like I think he didn't want it to get hit by the car, but he also didn't want us to like get upset about seeing a prairie dog hit by a car.
What kind of father was your dad to you and the kids?
Like loving, dedicated, patient.
How did your dad wake you up every morning?
He'd go diddly-diddly-diddly-diddly-dee-dee, and he'd like come in making that sound. And, like I know I'd like used to kind of dread that sound, but I'd like to hear it now.
Did you have dinner together every night as a family?
Yeah,
What was your dad's favorite thing to cook for you guys?
he always liked to make us omelets, and like after we would just talk.
So you guys spent a lot of time at the dinner table as a family talking together. Did you guys go to church together?
Yeah, most Sundays like we would go out to breakfast first, like at Lamar's Donuts or Panera Bread, and then he would take us to church.
Did he love taking you to In-N-Out Burger?
Yeah, when we went to California and got to go to Disneyland, we were all very excited about going to In-N-Out Burger, and it was like a big deal. I think my sister Brooke and my dad, they both bought In-N-Out Burger shirts, and they came up with this little song about how we're like the In-N-Out Burger family.
Did your dad have a way of trying to make you guys help around the house?
Yeah, he had a Happy Helper song. He'd say, "We call them happy helpers because they love to help," and we'd all like groan, but like now it makes me laugh.
Was your dad the kind of dad that sat on the sidelines when you kids were playing, or was he playing with you all the time?
Well, he played with us all the time, and he took us to the park a lot. He took us outside a lot, and we would play like the lava game and jackpot 500 and tag and all sorts of games. And like my dad would play with us, and all these other kids at the park who we didn't even know would want to play too.
Was your dad supportive of your activities in school?
Yeah, like my brother did swim all throughout high school, and my dad was like always there.
When was the only time you ever saw your dad get frustrated?
Like if there was traffic and he was trying to get like to Weston swim meets or to like pick me up from school or to like be there for one of us, he would get upset. But I mean, he wouldn't get upset at us. He'd just get upset at the traffic because he wanted to be there.
Did you enjoy walks with your father?
Sometimes, like I always really like going for walks, and sometimes he would let me go, and then like I would think I was walking alone, and I'd look back, and he'd Sorry. Like he'd be following me.
Just checking up on you to make sure you were okay.
Yeah. But he'd like catch up to me and walk with me then, but
Did your dad always want to make sure that all of you were included in the same activities together?
I mean, yeah, he wanted all of us to be like involved and stuff, but we were allowed to do the things that we were interested in. We didn't all have to just have the same passions.
Was there a time where you were going to get left out at Elitch's and your dad made sure that you were included?
Your Honor, can we approach, please?
Ms. Teach McGuire, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. What did your dad like to do in his spare time?
He liked to travel. He liked to like barbecue or grill food. He liked to read and hike and go for walks.
Was he a fan of any Texas sports teams that we probably shouldn't talk about?
Dallas Cowboys.
Your Honor, if I may approach the witness with what's been marked as People's Exhibit 1098.
Yes.
Ms. Cowan, do you recognize that disc?
Yes.
Do you see your name and initials on it?
Yes.
What is that? What does that disc contain?
It's photos of my dad with family, like with his siblings, some with us, with his parents.
And does it fairly and accurately represent some moments of your dad's life?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I would move for the admittance of 1098.
No further objection.
Right, based on my previous ruling, P-TR-1098 is admitted, and I'm specifically referring to Order C-204, and the exhibit may be published.
Thank you. If I could please have 1098. Thank you. Ms. Cowden, I now want to talk to you about July 19th and 20th of 2012. How old were you on July 19th of 2012?
16.
How old was your sister Brooke?
17.
Tell me about what you remember about the day of July 19th.
I remember that Brooke and Dad, they went to the park, and when they came back, like, we had talked about going to see a movie that night, and my dad joked that he had gotten us tickets to Brave. Was this Disney movie that was out?
Did you want to see the Disney movie?
No, at the time.
What movie did you want to see?
The Batman movie.
Did you go to the Batman movie that night with your dad?
Yes.
What is the last memory you have of your father in that theater?
I mean, besides waking him up, like, trying to wake him up, like, before that, when the shooting started, like, he started to get up, and he started to move forward, but then he hesitated and turned to make sure that we were coming to. And, like, before that, during the commercials, I remember that he, like, insisted on me taking the extra armrest that was in between us, because he was to the left of me, and, like, he had his arm up, and without thinking about it, I kind of put my arm up and bumped him, and I was like, oh, but then he, like, put my elbow up because he wanted me to have the armrest. And, like, also during the commercials, there was one Superman commercial. Sorry. There was a Superman commercial, and it was like a theater of superhero fans, so everyone started cheering, and we, like, looked at each other in the dark and kind of just laughed, just at how, like, excited everyone was.
Where did you go after you left the theater that night?
They took us to Gateway High School. They, like, brought around some RTDs, and they took us to Gateway.
Did you know for certain when you were at Gateway High School what had happened to your father?
We weren't certain, but, like, in the theater, when I touched him, like, I thought immediately that he was dead. Sorry.
Did you leave Gateway High School and then go to your dad's house?
Yeah, like, I just remember we kept using people's phones to try to call our dad, and it just kept going to voicemail, and we tried to call our mom, even though it was, like, our dad's night to take us, and we couldn't get in touch with her. And so a policeman drove us to our dad's house, and our dad had the keys, so the policeman, like, had to do the lock on the door and had to get us in. And I remember, like, my Aunt Caitlin, sorry. She had heard about what had happened on the news. Like, she didn't know the details. She just heard that there had been, like, a shooting in Aurora close to where we lived. And she called to ask if it was true and, like, to check that everyone was okay. And I don't think, like, Brooke was the one talking to her on the phone, but, like, I don't think she was scared when she called because she was just, like, wanting to check up. I think she thought it was all okay. And my sister had to tell her that her dad didn't run out with us, and, like, I could just hear her start to cry on the phone. And then when our mom got there, it was like, she was just, like, crying so hard, like, It was like she couldn't breathe. It was just like she was hysterical almost. And she was just like calling all these hospitals.
Were you eventually officially notified that your father was murdered?
Yeah, at Gateway, like, I guess it was like all the 12, like, families and groups of friends were in this big room, and my mom's at the time boyfriend, who's now husband, he asked, like, if our missing people, if they're not on the list of injured people, does it mean that they're gone? And the chief of police said, like, yes. And I just remember, like, there was just this complete uproar of people crying, and, like, I think I remember someone even screaming.
Did you have 2 separate funerals for your dad?
Yeah, we had a memorial service in Colorado, and then we had a funeral in Austin, Texas.
What was the toughest thing about the funeral in Austin for you?
It's for me, the hardest thing was just like putting my hand on his coffin.
Your Honor, can we approach, please?
Yes. All right, Ms. Stitch McGuire, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Ms. Cowden, can you please tell the jury about the impact of your dad's murder on your brothers and sisters?
Like, I don't really know even where to begin. It's like, I feel like in a way it's like we're closer now, but it's like we're also farther away from each other now. And like, I just feel like my family's broken.
Can you tell the jury about the impact of your dad's murder on you?
I mean, like, I'm a mess up here.
What do you miss most about your dad?
I'm just everything. I miss, like, him telling stories and, like, making everyone laugh, and, like, his patience. Like, he was always patient with us, even when we weren't patient with each other. And, like, it's selfish to say, but, like, I just miss him being my dad. And it was like, he was just so present in our lives that, like, growing up, the idea of one of my parents dying, it wasn't ever something that I ever even considered, because they were so present. Like, I just miss him being there.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cowden. I have no further questions.
Ms. Brady, do you have any questions?
I don't, thank you.
And the jury does not appear to have any questions. Ms. Cowden, thank you. May she be released from her subpoena?
Please, thank you, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, sir.
All right, thank you.
Just got done hearing very emotional testimony from Sierra Cowden. Her father was killed in the shooting and her sister was injured. Obviously very tearful, very emotional, kind of describing everything and how what she saw and what she experienced on that day on July 20th of 2012. Those of you just joining us, as you can see on the bottom of your screen, we have a verdict that was reached in phase 3, which is the 4th and final deliberation in this process. The verdict will be read at 5 p.m. We are in the process of waiting. We were given 3 hours once we were told the jury was reached verdict before the judge will be announcing that verdict, which we expect to take about 20 to 30 minutes. He doesn't have nearly as many counts to go through as he did during the guilty phase, which was about 165 counts. Now I want to go ahead and we've got Jacqueline Allen, our reporter. She's out at the courthouse, the Arapahoe County Courthouse, waiting for this verdict. Let's go to that video.
I'm here at the Arapahoe County Courthouse where the jury has just reached a verdict in the James Holmes trial. They were deciding between or the death penalty, and we will find out what their decision is at 5 o'clock here. I've been speaking to victims and family members all evening tonight. They say they are shaken. They feel this is all about to come to a close. Again, that decision will be announced at 5 o'clock. Jacqueline Allen, 7 News.
Again, that was Jacqueline Allen reporting from the courthouse. She is there waiting for the verdict to come down, and we also expect to hear from victims' families, obviously, you know, coming to a close of a very emotional process that has taken several months. I want to go back, though, and kind of walk you through the sentencing phase and what was entailed and what the prosecution and the defense had to prove or not prove. And we've got a PowerPoint that Andrew put together to kind of walk us through that, so let's go to that now. So this kind of walks us through what factored into each phase of the penalty phase of the trial. And the first phase focused on the aggravating factors. And this essentially was where the prosecution had to prove that one of these aggravating factors existed in order to move forward to phase 2. Now, we obviously know that we did move forward, and in this case, the jury unanimously decided that these aggravating factors existed, all of them except for one, which we'll see as we go through here. So I'm going to walk us through all of these factors. The first one, again, just one of these had to be proved to move to phase 2. Quite a few more than that were proven, just one was not. The first aggravating factor was that the defendant committed the offense in an especially heinous, cruel, or depraved manner. The second aggravating factor was that in commission of the offense, the defendant knowingly created a grave risk of death to another person in addition to the victim of the offense. Now, this one is a little bit wordy, but essentially this is saying that the defendant unlawfully and intentionally, knowingly, or with universal malice, manifesting extreme indifference to the value of human life, generally killed 2 or more persons during the commission of the same criminal episode. So this is, you know, that he intentionally and knowingly did this with disregard for human life. The second one, and this one is short, but you know, it's kind of hard to understand. Basically, this is that the defendant committed the offense while lying in wait. Essentially, what that means is that the defendant committed this crime while, you know, they didn't know it was coming. They were essentially ambushed. They were caught off guard. They weren't in a fight. You know, he did this while it was unexpected. Now we've got the defendant intentionally killed a child who has not yet attained 12 years of age. Now the jury did not find this one present, and you know, they had some issues with this, came back, asked about the language. Essentially what this comes down to is the youngest victim of the theater shooting was 6-year-old Veronica Moser Sullivan, and the jury basically said that they couldn't find that the defendant knowingly killed a 6-year-old. She was obviously there at the time, but they didn't find that he knowingly killed a 6-year-old or a child under 12 years of age. As I mentioned, the jury found 4 of the 5 factors, just not that last factor there, and because they only needed to find one factor present, we moved automatically to phase 2. And just to give a little bit of background here, it took them about 8 hours to deliberate on this decision. Now we move to phase 2, which is looking at mitigating factors, and do mitigating factors outweigh aggravating factors? So essentially the defense was arguing that these mitigating factors outweighed the aggravating factors that the prosecution was able to prove were present during phase 1. So these factors were that they argued that the defendant's capacity to appreciate wrongfulness of the defendant's conduct or to conform the defendant's conduct to the requirements of law was not significantly impaired, but not so impaired as to constitute a defense to prosecution. Second mitigating factor was that the defendant was under unusual and substantial duress, although not such duress as to constitute a defense to prosecution, or the emotional state of the defendant at the time of the crime was committed. These are mitigating factors talking about, you know, the defendant's state of mind, where he was at when this crime was committed. We've got the third one here, the extent of the defendant's cooperation, the absence of any significant prior conviction, so arguing that he hadn't had any previous convictions prior to the crime committed at the theater. The good faith, although mistaken, belief by the defendant that circumstances existed which constituted a moral justification for the defendant's conduct. So that, you know, is looking at basically that he somehow believed that what he was doing was morally justified for his conduct. We've got the fourth one here. I believe the defendant is not a continuing threat to society. Any other evidence which in the court's opinion bears on the question of mitigation. So they were arguing that he's no longer a threat and that mitigating factors should outweigh the aggravating factors. In the end on this, the jury did not find any of the factors that I just mentioned outweighed the aggravating factors that the prosecution argued for in phase one. Deliberations in this phase lasted under 3 hours, so significantly less time than they took during phase one. Now, during phase three, this was, very emotional testimony. We had the victim impact evidence, and that was when the prosecution called 13 witnesses who, tearfully spoke about the victims and their loved ones who were killed in the shooting. Each of the 11 adult victims had a spouse, a parent, or a sibling testify about their lives when they learned that their loved one had been killed in the shooting, what led up to that. Closing arguments in this phase were half as long as expected. Now, each side had 40 minutes for their primary arguments and 20 minutes for their optional rebuttals, but it didn't take as long as expected and moved forward fairly quickly. Now, the fourth and final verdict, what the jury has come to a decision on, is life in prison or death penalty. And that is the verdict that we are going to hear here at 5 o'clock. It took the jury about 6.5 hours to come to this decision. This came after they asked to review some very gruesome crime scene video that has never been released to the public. This video is about 45 minutes long, and it was taken shortly after the shooting. I believe the bodies were still there, so very, very gruesome crime scene video. The judge gave them 50 minutes, which is about 5 minutes longer than the video, to watch that full 45 minutes of crime scene, and then a short time later they came back letting the judge know that they had a decision. We've been given about a 3-hour time period from when that happened to when the verdict will be read at 5 p.m. Obviously this is coming to a close for a lot of the victims' families, which we will also likely hear from after this verdict is read. But before we do that, we kind of want to continue walking through some of the emotional testimony that I mentioned from phase 3. Right now we are going to hear a clip from Amanda Medek, who is the older sister of Michaela Medek, who died in the shooting. Let's take a listen.
Ms. Medek, I'm going to ask you to pull the microphone up to you to the best you can. The chair moves and the microphone moves too.
Okay.
To make sure that we can hear you over the microphone. Ms. Medek, what do you do for a living?
I work at Zillow Group for the strategic partnership team.
And did you have a sister named Michaela Medek?
I did have a sister named Michaela Medek.
If I could have a 4711, please, an already admitted photograph. Is this a picture of Michaela?
That's a photo of Michaela.
You can take that down. How old are you, and how old was Michaela in relation to you?
So I'm currently 30, and my little sister was 4 years younger than I am.
So how old was she when she died?
So she had just turned 23, and I had just turned 27.
And I'm still going to ask you. You're very soft-spoken. If you can pull the microphone up to you a little more.
This is a heavy chair.
It is a heavy chair. Did you grow up with Michaela?
Yes, we were very close.
Who were the members in your family when you were growing up?
So we have a very large family, and my grandparents live about 15 minutes away, and in my immediate family it was basically my little sister, my mother, my father, and I.
Did you grow up in Colorado?
We did. We grew up in Aurora.
Were you close to your sister growing up?
You could say that. I was the boss. I'm the big sister. Thick as thieves, always somebody to play with. We were outside kids. We grew up next to a large field, so we were always catching gross things and, riding our bikes. So yeah, you could say we were close.
How would you describe Michaela when she was a child?
Your Honor, I object under 403 and 401 in due process.
Sustain.
What kind of a personality did Michaela have?
As a kid growing up, she was always very outgoing, always had a ton of friends, very level-headed, very grounded,
very sweet girl. We grew up in church twice on Sunday. Just very giving, very forgiving, just very even-tempered. It's kind of like she knew she had a secret, you know. She knew that the day would continue day by day and no anxiety was needed. Life would just go on. So I'd say she was gentle, sweet, loving kid.
What was her relationship like with your mother?
We're all very, very close. So I think that this has brought us closer. They're exactly the same person, very calm, very easygoing, while, like I'm the opposite. I'm always going forward and moving and anxious, and she's just very calm and, like grounding, easygoing. We're all very close. My grandmother, she was really close with my grandmother. I mean, she lived 15 minutes away, so we were always over there. We're just a very tight-knit clan.
When you were a teenager, because you were 4 years older, did you try to teach her to drive?
Yes, which was an experience. I think she had just turned 15. I think that, sorry. I'm a little nervous.
That's okay.
Yes, I tried to teach her how to drive. She got in the car and asked me which one was the brake and which one was the gas. And I get out of the car like, this is not okay. So, I tried to teach her how to drive. I mean, she was my little sister. She's my kid sister.
What kind of things did she do with your mother?
They love to shop. I guess that's what mothers and daughters do, right? We went to movies, like we all went to movies and, I don't know, normal family things.
What was her relationship like with your dad?
Again, we're all very close. My dad would go and visit her. She worked at the university hospital at a restaurant there while she was going to college, and he'd go and visit her. We'd go out to dinner all the time. I want to say we went out to dinner at least once a week. Like, we all saw each other at least once a week.
Did Michaela still live at home with your parents or in her own apartment?
She had moved to her own apartment. She was living with her best friend, and it was pretty close to where the theater was. So she had recently moved out. She was starting to become a college kid.
When was the last time that you talked to Michaela?
It was a few days before. We were talking about what we were going to do for my grandmother's birthday, which was on that date, but we were discussing what we were going to do on the weekend.
Was your grandmother's birthday on July 20th?
Yeah, my grandmother's birthday is on July 20th.
Do you still celebrate her birthday on July 20th?
Your Honor, objection 401, 403, due process.
Overruled.
I think that celebrations are dulled and limited, but we definitely are still a very close family, and we still get together and celebrate each other's lives.
How did you learn about the shooting?
I was selfish, and I was in bed at 5 in the morning, and my dad is a big talker, so he knows I'm up that early in the morning, so he had called me, and I didn't answer because I had to do this teacher training thing, and then I was waiting for a voicemail, and it must have been a very long voicemail because it seems like it was forever till it gave the ring, and I listened to the voicemail, and it said, my dad was trying to be strong.
Hold on. There's an objection as to hearsay. What's the response?
Your Honor, it goes to her finding out about what happened.
Okay. So this goes to the effect on the listener.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, overruled based on my prior rulings and based on the record made just now. Go ahead.
So I listened to the voicemail, and my dad said that Michaela had been shot. And I leapt out of bed, and I just kept doing this because I couldn't process anything. So I was like very anxious, and my mind was racing, and I grabbed whatever I could in my closet. I threw flip-flops on and got in my car, and I raced down to Gateway High School. I went the wrong way down the street, and I'm just thinking, it's okay. Like, I'm gonna get there, it will be fine. I just need to figure it out. So I got to Gateway High School, and my parents were there, and a ton of my sister's friends were there, and I just started asking questions, like, what's going on? Who have you spoke to? We got a list of all the hospitals. My mother had previously been calling these hospitals since 1 a.m. So I recalled all of these hospitals, and we knew that there was a bunch of Jane Does or people that hadn't been identified yet. So I dropped my parents off, and I just went to everywhere. Children's Hospital, University, I went to Swedish, I went to hospitals that they weren't admitting people to. I went to Presbyterian Denver Health. I thought maybe she'd, been shocked and she couldn't, she wouldn't be able to describe who she is. And so I just went everywhere, and I kept getting called back to Gateway High School to be interviewed by the police and then be interviewed by victims advocates, and then I'd go back to University Hospital because they would call me and tell me there's a new Jane Doe, and I just kept repeating her name, Michaela, Medek.
Did you ultimately learn that your sister had been shot and killed?
I went back to Gateway High School. I was called in by an officer, and he showed me a photo on his phone of my little sister's driver's license and asked me to identify the photo. And they wouldn't tell me anything. All I did was identify the photo. And we got called into Gateway High School into a large room, and just happened to be that there were, just like 12 sets of people just in these chairs, and we went into a large room.
Your Honor, I would object at this point for 3 due process.
Overruled. Ask your next question, please.
When you were at Gateway High School, did you learn what had happened?
No.
Did you go back to your home?
Yes. We went back to my parents' house, and there was over 150 people at my parents' house. Front yard, backyard, in the house, everywhere. Just my sister's friends, our family, our community, people in the church.
Is that where you learned, were you at home when that you learned what happened?
We got a call, and 2 black cars came down the end of the street. We were in the backyard, just the family, just the immediate family. And all I remember is my knees buckling and slamming into the concrete floor, and that I have a hard time remembering what happened after that.
I'm going to show you some photographs. Your Honor, may I approach with People's Exhibits 4710, 4712, and 4713?
You may.
Do you recognize these photographs?
I do.
Who are they photographs of?
They're photographs of my family and my little sister.
Your Honor, I'd move for the admittance of People's Exhibits 4710, 4712, and 4713.
Any objection?
Nothing additional, Your Honor.
All right, based on my prior rulings, P-TR-4710, 4712, and 4713 are admitted and may be published.
Could I have 4712, please? Can you tell us about this picture when it was taken?
Yeah, this was March 2012, It was my dad's birthday party at the Chop House
And that's
downtown.
your dad and
that's
you
my-
and Michaela?
My dad and my sister and I, yeah.
Could I have 4713, please?
That was my baby sister in California. I think sometime the summer of 2011.
Could I have 4710, please?
That's Thanksgiving, 2011. My sister framed this photo for me and gave it to me on Christmas.
Was that a typical kind of thing for her to do?
She was so loving, but not very sentimental. So it was very surprising that she had printed and framed this photo in a frame that said "Sisters Always." She was really funny with gifts. They were very, she was a college kid, so you'd get a Christmas card with an IOU in it for like, I owe you dinner, or like things that, to spend time with you, I owe you a movie, but it was never like, I owe you an iPod or something, like it was always like, I owe you dinner.
And did she, in fact, then take you to dinner at some point?
I don't think I got the dinner this time. I got the photo.
What has the impact been on the life of your parents since this occurred?
You never expect to lose your kid before you go, They've definitely bonded together. You either separate or you bond together. They're very close now. They're both on antidepressants. Just depressed, a lot of anger, a lot of grief to work through, and they're working through it together. It's a hard subject to bring up. I think your parents try and be supportive and strong for you, so I think that they're showing a lot of strength.
And for you, what's been the impact for you?
I mean, I'm kind of an emotional wreck here. It's been a hard 3 years. I don't remember time periods of my life. I don't remember, periods after it happened. I was self-medicating. It's not easy. I lost my little sister. I don't have, these monumental occasions. I don't have, my sister's not going to be there. I think it's really hard to try and change the dynamic of your life in this whole new paradigm of being an only child, and it's really hard.
You said that you used to go to a lot of movies. Do you still go to movies?
Absolutely not. I can't walk into a movie theater. There's absolutely not.
What was the best characteristic of Michaela? What did you love best about her?
Loving, just filled with love. Loved kids, loved people. If you needed a friend, she was a great person to sit down with you. If you needed anybody, my sister would be there. Loving, so loving, kind, sweet, innocent. She was a kid. She was just learning, she was just about to be a college kid. She was young. She never fell in love. She never, got to have a family. She never she had big trips, big plans. She never got to do any of that.
Honor objection, 403 due process.
Sustained. Ask your next question, please.
What do you miss most?
Selfishly, I miss my sister. I miss, having somebody to talk to, having somebody to call. I miss my grounding force. She always understood everything. You know, like you have a special bond when you grow up with somebody.
Thank you.
Is there any cross-examination?
No, Your Honor.
And the jury does not appear to have any questions for Ms. Medek. May Ms. Medek be released from her subpoena? Any objection?
Absolutely not.
All right, thank you, Ms. Medek.
That was testimony from Amanda Medek, whose older sister was killed in the shooting. Obviously very emotional testimony. Most of the victims who spoke about their loved ones were obviously very emotional when describing how they learned about their loved one being killed during phase 3 of the sentencing phase of this trial. Now, we want to note, obviously, the verdict is going to be read here in a little over an hour at 5 p.m. We will hear from the judge about whether or not the jury has decided to give the defendant life in prison without parole or the death penalty. While we still don't know, I mean, it could be life in prison, it could be the death penalty. We kind of wanted to walk you through what happens if the defendant gets the death penalty, how much it costs, what would be the process, how long it could potentially take. So we've done some additional research and kind of want to walk you through that. Here's kind of how it would work. First, if he is given the death penalty, he would first be processed in a Denver facility. From there, he would then be taken, and I want to show you, Andrew, if we can pull up this Google map here. He would be taken to the Sterling Correctional Facility that you can see here on the map. This is a maximum security prison. This is where all of the inmates who are on death row right now in Colorado are being held, and there are 3 who are on death row in Colorado right now. So he would be taken here, and from here, this is kind of would be the waiting point, and until a death warrant was issued for the defendant, which we know can take years, and it's unclear exactly when that would happen, but it would not be anytime soon. The defendant would then be taken to the correctional facility in Canyon City, which I've got up on the map here. Let me try to zoom in so you can get a better idea of what it looks like. This is the correctional facility in Canyon City. And just to give you a little bit of background and a better understanding of kind of how the death penalty works in Colorado as it is right now, state law requires that all executions take place at this facility in Canyon City prior to what's called warrant week. And that is, you need to have the warrant for his death. The condemned inmate would be transferred from the Sterling Correctional Facility, which we saw a few moments ago on the Google map here, and this is where the state's death sentence offenders are currently housed. They would be transferred from the Sterling facility to this facility in Canyon City. The inmate would spend their last days in a holding cell located in the execution suite. Now, when you get down to how the death penalty and how his life would be taken, it would be lethal injection, and state law dictates that the death penalty can only be carried out by means of a continuous injection of a lethal quantity of sodium thiopental or other equally or more effective substance. This is also kind of interesting. The lethal injection team, they're anonymous, and they're comprised of 2 state prison staff members whose identities shall be strictly confidential. Department of Corrections regulation state they remain anonymous during this execution by requiring these 2 staffers to alternate in administering each injection of the multiple chemicals and by marking the chemical bottles by number only. So they essentially make sure that they are not known, and they do this by alternating giving the injection to the inmate. Soon before the execution, there are a select group of witnesses, usually comprised of the victims or victims' families, the prosecuting and defense attorneys, who would be able to witness the death in this facility in Canyon City. To get here would be a very long process, and actually, if we can step out from this map at this point, I kind of want to tell you a little bit. I spoke with a death penalty expert about a month ago by the name of Michael Radelet. He's a CU sociology professor. He's been studying the death penalty for more than 35 years and is actually writing a book about the history of the death penalty in Colorado. And we kind of just wanted to lay out, what are the costs associated with the death penalty versus life in prison without parole, and why are those costs so much more? So basically what Professor Radelet was able to tell us is that on average, it costs taxpayers a lot more for the death penalty than it does for life in prison without parole. And here's why. It can typically be about, to go back, it costs about 6 to 8 times more for the death penalty than it does life in prison without parole. And the reason really comes down to lawyers cost more than prison guards. So you, during the death penalty, even though he may be, the decision from the jury may be to give him the death penalty, there's a long process before that warrant for his death is actually issued. There's lots of appeals, and because there are so many mental health experts involved, the expert that I talked to said that it will likely cost a lot more for the defendant's death penalty case because there's so many mental health experts, which he says can cost anywhere to $300 to $400 an hour for mental health experts, and that's just for one. So you can imagine the amount of money that would add up to for the several mental health experts that would likely be called during the appeals process if the defendant is given the death penalty. Also, another interesting statistic that he shared with me, right now in the United States, the average wait time between sentence to execution is about 20 years. So that is a significant amount of time. It's not likely that if he is given the death penalty that we will see that carried out for a very long time, and it would likely be through many appeals processes before we even got to that point. So now I want to kind of segue. We've got a video from 7 News reporter Marshall Zellinger, who is at the courtroom, will be there when the verdict is read, talking about, kind of telling us what is going to happen and play out at the Arapahoe County Courthouse. Let's take a listen.
I'm Marshall Zellinger outside the Arapahoe County Courthouse, and I'll be going inside the courtroom shortly, awaiting the 5 p.m. Mountain Time verdict in the Aurora Theater shooting case in the sentencing phase of the trial. What I'm going to do when I'm inside the courtroom, I'm going to watch as the jury enters the courtroom and see if they make any looks in the direction of the defendant or the defendant's parents. In the past, they have not, and in the past, all of the verdicts have been against the defendant. As the judge reads the verdict, I'm going to watch the shooter's parents. They'll be directly in front of me and to the left a little bit. I'll quickly look at the defendant himself, but you'll be able to see his reaction on the screen. And then I'll look to my right and see the reaction of the family members of the victims killed in the shooting and some of the survivors in the courtroom. As soon as the trial is complete, I'll come outside and give my observations on 7 News.
And that was 7 News reporter Marshall Zellinger, who has been covering this trial from the very beginning. He is going to be in the courtroom when the verdict is read. As he mentioned, he will be right behind the defendant's parents when that verdict is read. Kind of want to segue back to what we were talking about before we went to the video with Marshall, just in regards to the death penalty, how it works, how much it costs in Colorado, and some of the history behind that. Wanted to kind of take it full circle. Again, we do not know if the defendant is going to be given the death penalty or he could get life in prison without parole, but I spoke with a death penalty expert just about the cost, and he kind of went through the history. And so you are aware right now Colorado has had only 2 executions in the last 50 years. The most recent was in 1997, and that was a man by the name of Gary Lee Davis, who was executed for the murder of a woman in Adams County. Right now there are 3 men who are on death row in our state. So that's kind of some information just in regards to, it's not something taken lightly. There's a lot of appeals processes, a lot of things involved with death penalty cases, and once a defendant is given the death penalty. So while whether it's life in prison without parole or the death penalty, this will bring closure to this very long trial process. There is still going to be quite a longer process if he is given the death penalty. Life in prison without parole comes with not as many appeals processes. It would be there wouldn't be as many appeals, and it wouldn't cost as much as the death penalty would. I want to go ahead and segue kind of back to what we had been listening to in the testimony that we've heard throughout the day here as we wait for the verdict. We have been replaying for you sound from the victims' family members who were called to testify during phase 3 of the penalty phase. Right now we want to go and listen to very emotional testimony from Ashley Moser, who is Veronica Moser Sullivan's mother. She was the youngest killed in the shooting. She was 6 years old at the time. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
All right, Mr. Brockler, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, have you been in the courtroom here as we've put up some pictures of Veronica?
Yes.
Is that your daughter?
Yes.
I know that we had you in here before testifying about what happened to you in the theater. That's not what we're here to talk about right now, okay?
Okay.
I want to talk to you about your daughter who she was to you, and then we'll talk about the impact of her murder on you, okay?
Okay.
When was Veronica born?
December 23rd, 2005.
How old were you when you had her?
18.
Were you single?
No.
Were you married?
No.
Were you with Ian?
Yes.
Did you get married after her birth at some point?
Yes.
How did you come up with the name for her?
Actually, Ian really liked the name Veronica, so he chose that name, and I chose her middle name.
What's her middle name?
Hani.
Spell that for us.
Hanni.
Where'd you get that?
When I was pregnant with her, I worked at Starbucks, and I had a regular, this older gentleman, and every day he would bring me 5 girl names. And one day I just fell in love with the name Hani, and he said it was, I don't know, a Swedish name, but so that's how I got that name.
I know she was 6 when she died, but what was her personality like?
Her personality was, she was, like, very, like, silly and fun and excited and happy and just fun-loving and caring and sweet.
Did she have any brothers or sisters?
No.
What were some things leading up to July? What were some things that she liked?
She liked to draw and she liked to read.
Was she a good reader?
Yeah, she was.
What kind of books did she read?
Oh, just like well, she had just learned how to read, so I don't know, the little ones that they send home from the school, like the 3-letter word ones. But I mean, I would read to her at night, so.
Did she have friends that she played with?
At school, yes, yeah.
Did you see her interact with her friends?
Yes.
What was she like as a friend in her 5-year, 6-year?
She was a follower, but she was just, I don't know, caring. I mean, she was not a bully or at all. She was just very submissive, I guess. Wanted to, follow whatever the other child wanted to do.
I'm going to use a word, demeanor, but I want to ask you, was she upbeat, subdued, sad, happy? How was she in her day-to-day interactions?
She was very upbeat and very happy all the time.
What other things did she like? Did she like toys?
No, not really. She didn't like toys too much.
What did she prefer to toys?
Mostly coloring and looking at books, and she had a lot of energy, so just like going to the park and stuff.
Before July 20th of 2012, did she like movies?
Yes, she did.
What was she like when she'd watch a movie?
It was very unique. When I would put on a movie for her, if you would try to talk to her, she couldn't even hear you at all. And I'd have to go up in front of the TV or turn it off for her to um, hear me at all.
Did you see her interact with your mom and your other relatives?
Yes.
How was she with them?
She was good with them. I don't know, like
Nice.
nice, yeah.
She a hugger, a cuddler, handshaker, high fiver?
No, she was very independent, I'd say. She wasn't like too much of a hugger. Only when she was tired, that's when I knew when she got tired.
What was your relationship with your daughter like leading up to July of 2012?
She was like my best friend. She was my life.
I was going to ask you that. How much of your life from the age of 18 until July of 2012 did your daughter consume?
Like all of it. I didn't go more than 24 hours without her.
Was there something that you did together that was a favorite thing of yours?
Well, my favorite thing was just finding free festivals to always go to, free days at the zoo, the museum, just going places.
Did she enjoy people?
Yeah, was very social.
I think you've described her in the past as she loved everybody.
Yes. She did.
Was she excited?
Very.
20th, 2012, was she excited?
Oh yeah, she was very excited, especially just because she got to hang out with, the older girls, so.
And you had told her before the theater about your good news?
Yes, yeah, I did.
Was she excited about the prospect of being a big sister?
Yeah, I think, yeah, she was. I don't know how well she grasped it, but yeah.
We've heard about what happened in the theater and how you came to find out about your daughter's death.
I'm sorry?
We've already come to find out about how you found out about your daughter's death and what took place in the theater. I want to ask you about afterwards, without going into the physical stuff, the stuff we see that we know about. There's no easier question than how are you different after the murder of your daughter?
Very different. Just deal a lot with depression and anxiety.
Tell us more about that.
I don't know who I am anymore. 'Cause I was a mom when I was 18. And that's all I knew how to be. And now I'm not a mom. So.
Do you have to take medication?
Yes.
Not for the physical stuff, but for the emotional stuff?
Yeah.
Tell us how your daughter's death has caused you to have to do this.
Yeah, it has caused me to be in an intensive outpatient program at a depression center. Because there was times that I did not leave the house. I didn't want to do anything.
Are you on medications right now?
Yeah.
Do they help you get through the day?
I mean, well, yeah, sometimes.
the thing you miss most about your daughter?
I don't know, everything. Her smile, her laugh. The way she just was, she was my little silly Billy. I don't know, she was always trying to make people happy.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing.
Do you have any questions, Ms. Brady?
No, sir.
And the jury does not appear to have any questions. May Ms. Moser.
You just heard testimony from Ashley Moser. Her daughter, 6-year-old Veronica Sullivan Moser, was the youngest killed in the theater shooting. Want to go ahead and kind of take you back to where we are right now. We are less than an hour away from where the judge will read the verdict in phase 3, the final phase in the penalty phase, where we will learn whether or not the defendant is going to get life in prison without parole or the death penalty. That verdict will be read at 5 o'clock. We also want to go back and kind of talk about what happened today. The jury had been deliberating in this phase for about 6.5 hours before they came to a decision. Before they did that this morning, they asked for something, I wouldn't say unusual, but they asked to see additional video that had already been played during other phases of this penalty phase. Very gruesome video. They asked at about 9 o'clock this morning to review 45 minutes of crime scene video, very graphic crime scene video that has not been released to the public, that was taken shortly after the shooting happened, showing the scene inside the theater. And then a short time after that, the jury came back saying that they had reached a decision, and we are waiting at this point to hear what that decision is. I want to kind of go through and show you a little bit of what the makeup of the jury is. Andrew, if we can take this full screen, and this kind of just shows the demographics of the jurors. We have 9 women and 3 men on the jury. Juror number 1, as you can see, is a Caucasian woman, approximately in her 40s, has kids in the military, and is a union plumber. Jury number 2 is also a Caucasian woman, middle-aged. Attorneys said death penalty should rarely be used. Now, juror number 3 here is a Hispanic woman, possibly. We don't have exactly, obviously, this information, the jurors, is kept secret until the verdict is read and the trial is moved forward and they have been dismissed by the judge. But as you can see here, there is more women than men, a lot of Caucasian women. We've got another one, juror number 4 here, also approximately in her 40s and a union member. Juror number 5, also a Caucasian woman in her 50s. Her niece survived Columbine. Juror number 6, or seat number 6, juror number 87, hadn't gotten that right, I apologize for that, but seat number 6 here, also a Caucasian woman, was a biology major, also in her 40s to 50s, and believes an eye for an eye. So this juror was excused on June 15th. Oh, but just re-clicked on that. We've got juror number 8, who's also excused on June 9th. So, throughout this, we have had, some jurors who were dismissed for various reasons. I'm sure, as you remember, the one who watched the news coverage and was dismissed as a result of that, and the tweet by the defense attorney that he was asked to delete following that. But that was obviously some controversy that happened, and there were alternates, so nothing happened in regards to not moving the trial forward, but that is some of what you're seeing there. This juror here, seat number 10, juror number 1009, also a Caucasian woman in her 40s and 50s, worried about the media, concerned about privacy. These are just kind of some notes as far as, where they stand or said about certain things. Now we've got juror number 118 here, seat number 11, also a Caucasian woman in her 40s or 50s. Juror number 983, seat number 12. This is a Caucasian man, approximately in his 30s, doesn't watch TV, says he'll consider each charge. So Again, I'm not going to kind of go through all of these, but as you can see, we've got a lot of Caucasian women. We just had a Caucasian man here. There are 9 women and 3 men on the jury, and these are the same men and women who convicted the defendant on the 165 counts related to the July 20th, 2012 shooting in the Aurora movie theater. I kind of want to segue here now. We have our legal expert, Dan Recht, with us. Dan, thanks so much for joining us. Obviously, been with us throughout this whole process. Can you kind of talk about 6.5 hours is somewhat short for a death penalty or life in prison decision. What are your thoughts on how long they deliberated?
Well, I view it as somewhat short, absolutely. I mean, that jury had to sit in there and decide whether this person lives or dies, whether he gets executed or not. And so I'm a bit surprised at how quickly this happened. On the other hand, this jury has been reaching quick verdicts the whole time. And it bodes poorly, I think, for the defense. A quick verdict is in this case, I think, a prosecution verdict. With this caveat, and it's an important caveat, and that is it could be that the jury quickly decided, quickly within 6 hours, that they are irrevocably divided, that there's 1 or 2 or 3 people that just will not vote for death, and that they therefore check the 3rd box, which says we can't reach a unanimous verdict. And different than every other kind of criminal case, if they check that box, that means life in prison. It doesn't mean a mistrial, it doesn't mean a new trial, it doesn't mean a new hearing, it means life in prison if even 1 person will not vote for the death penalty.
That's good. Important information. What are your thoughts or the significance of the video that they asked to have played earlier this morning, in the very graphic crime scene video?
Yeah, that bodes poorly for the defense as well, it seems to me. I mean, there's no way a viewing of that video can somehow be helpful to the defense. And so who knows what they're talking about, and deciding or trying to think of or predicting what a jury is thinking is like reading tea leaves, as I've said before. But under no circumstances do I see it being helpful to the defense.
How long do we expect this to last? Obviously, with the 165 counts when we were in the guilty phase before we moved to the penalty phase, took a lot of time to read all those counts. What can we expect as far as this verdict at 5 o'clock, as far as what will happen and how long it may take?
Well, let's start with the beginning of the process, because there is no more dramatic time, maybe in anything in the world, but certainly within the judicial system. What will happen is all of the parties will be in the courtroom standing, the gallery will be full, the judge will be in the courtroom, the judge will call for the jury will walk in solemnly, you can be sure of that. You will be able to hear a pin drop. And then the bailiff walks up to the jury foreperson who is holding the jury verdict forms, the written verdict forms, and the bailiff brings those to the judge, and the judge looks through them before he starts to read them. All of this only takes a few minutes, but it will seem like a lifetime. And then the judge starts to read the verdicts. And the first murder verdict form to be read is way more significant than anything else, because presumably that whatever they say on one, they're going to say on all. I don't see a division here, so it's either death penalty on all or life in prison and on all. So that first one is of great significance, and we should be listening for it carefully.
Can they make distinctions on the
different? Well, they can, and the law would allow them to do that, but I don't know how they do that or why they would do that. So I don't think that's going to happen.
Once the decision is made, what's next? I mean, obviously we don't know what the decision is, but what would be next on both scenarios?
That's a good question. If the sentence is life in prison, it'll be life in prison. If the decision is death, execution, there will be an appeal process that lasts for years and years. And whether people like it or not, the odds of James Holmes being actually executed in our state at this time in history are slight. I mean, the legislature could overturn the death penalty, the Supreme Court could find it unconstitutional, a governor could commute the sentence, A governor could do what Hickenlooper did. Any number of things could happen that would prohibit or get in the way of a death penalty. So sadly for the families of the victims, this will not come to closure for a long time, unless life in prison is imposed, and then we've got closure.
The appeals process, we know it's long, but what role would the victims play in that, if any? Is
None.
that just, okay.
None. The appeals process, there's no room in an appeals process for any testimony other than what already happened at the trial. So it's not like it's being unfair to the victims. That's just true for both sides. You can't add anything. The appeal is based on what has already happened.
All right, well, thank you, Dan. We appreciate
My
it.
pleasure.
Appreciate you being here. Great insight in as far as what we can expect. I mean, it's been a long time coming to where we are now.
Certainly has.
So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
All right, we are going to go ahead and continue what we had started in regards to showing you the testimony from phase 3 of some of the victims, the families who lost loved ones during the theater shooting. We are going to continue with Robert Sullivan, who is the grandfather of 6-year-old Veronica Moser Sullivan, who again was the youngest victim in the shooting.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Please be seated. Could you please tell us your full name and spell your first, middle, and last names?
Robert, excuse me, let me pour a little water. It's Robert Mitchell Sullivan, Robert Mitchellsullivan.
Mr. Brockler, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, to you, who is Veronica Moser Sullivan?
She is my granddaughter, was my only granddaughter, only grandchild.
Tell us how you are related to her.
My son Ian was married to Ashley, and they had Veronica in 2006. And as I say, she was our only grandchild. Ian is our only child, so we lost our only child's only child.
Sir, at some point after the birth of Veronica, your son and Veronica's mother, Ashley, divorced. Is that fair?
Correct.
I want you to, if you could, describe for us the relationship that you were able to build with Veronica leading up to some things that we're going to talk about here.
Okay, well, when they were married, of course they had Veronica before they were married. They got married when she was 3. And, you establish the relationship as soon as she was born. And, the thoughts, the memories of each phase. I remember with Ian, when he was a child, when he was born, and being present and carrying him, being the first one to hold him. And I remember feeling like I was floating. It was such a wonderful experience. Well, raising him, each phase of his life, quite well remember the good and the bad times, the things that everybody has as a child growing up. As a parent, you learn, and becoming a grandparent is a special distinction there. So, we were able to incorporate some of the things we learned with Ian, raising him, and to enjoy. As a grandparent, you're limited in your exposure to a child, to your grandchild, and you tend to focus on, the fun things, the enjoyable things. You try to engender certain qualities and experiences you want them to experience. And, you know, there's so many memories I have as far as, you know, interacting with her, knowing what you can do as an infant, as a toddler, as a small child. And, you know, I couldn't wait, you know, to do some of the fun things. I wanted to interject the silly, you know, the fun, goofy things that, you know, make up a child's life before life gets more serious.
Tell us about in the months or even the year leading up to May, June, July of 2012, how much did you get to spend time with Veronica? How much time did you spend with her?
It was limited to weekends. My son had Veronica on the weekends because of Ashley had custody after the divorce, and so it was limited. But within those limitations, we certainly enjoyed her to the fullest. You know, having a grandchild, it's, like I said, it's such a wonderful experience. What you can share with them, as I say it, you know, what you want to engender, what you can put into their lives, and what you've learned already after raising a child. So the things, the experiences we had, you know, going to the zoo, going hiking, Ian took her camping, taught her to ski, well, as much as you can to that extent, you know, that he had her up at the slope where he was working at Winter Park. But sledding, the experiences that you get to share, things you want to expose them to, books, reading, you know, stories that are focused for them, movies, animated movies, things that, you know, are appropriate for that age. And, you know, I think of her, and there's certain aspects, I know later we will get to the photo that I wanted to, you know, mention as far as the significance of the photo and the qualities that I saw in Veronica. There was just a sweet innocence about this child. She had a sensitivity about her that, you know, I could relate to. When I was a kid, I was very shy and very sensitive, and I saw that in Veronica. She had, of course, the characteristics that most all children do, very playful, and it was those aspects I wanted to reinforce. In playing with her, I would really enjoy picking her up, running around pick her up like a sack of potatoes, like I said, and playing like a gorilla man, monkey man. And she would giggle and shriek with delight. And she really loved that game. But the other things, just acting silly, you know, it's like sometimes when I would see her, it'd be maybe several weeks. And especially when the period came after a long absence where I didn't get to see her, she was a little timid, and I'd look at her in the eyes and, you know, just start making facial, you know, caricatures and just funny faces to get her to lighten up, and she would giggle and start to laugh, and, you know, those type of things. I think they're essential. I think they're essential in building a person. You know, humor, you need some levity. You could use levity in this courtroom a number of times, I know, and humor is an essential part of life.
Sir, in the time that you had with Veronica, did you try to preserve a lot of that through pictures and video and stuff?
Yes, unfortunately, the burglary in October.
Would anyone object? 401, 403?
Would counsel approach, please?
Back at the file and see, but I know it was either taken in the fall of 2011 or spring of 2012.
Is that a fair and accurate picture of what she looked like before she was shot to death?
Oh, yes.
Your Honor, I'd move for the admission of People's Exhibit 4732 into evidence.
Is there any objection?
Nothing further?
All right, based on my prior rulings, P-TR-4732 is admitted and may be published.
Ma'am. You remember what occasioned that, or was this just one of many grandpa pictures?
Yeah, this is just one of many. One of the few that still have.
As we get into these next pictures, you've alluded to it to some extent, but tell us, in your contact with Veronica, what was her personality like?
As I was saying, you know, the thing that struck me about her first and foremost was her sensitivity. A little timid, but very bright, very smart, and a very fun-loving child. As I say, 6 years old. You know, there's only 6 years there, but you can see the seeds of, you know, great potential. And she was a sweetheart. I mean, when I think of her, the images I see in my mind, sometimes they correspond with some of the photos, and several photos that you have not submitted here, but I think of an angelic little girl. To me, she personified a little angel. I know people and most parents will feel this about their children. Your parents might have felt this way about you, little angel. I don't use those references as much, but in her case, this was an actuality. It was true.
Take a look at Exhibit 1099, sir. That's that disc.
Okay.
Tell us if you recognize the disc and tell us what's on it.
Okay, on this disc, there are fragments of her last Christmas. She spent Christmas with us, and we had quite a elaborate Christmas celebration. When I shot the video, I'd done this for years, you know, to the point where, you know, my son, my wife was like, oh my God, here we go again. You know, we get out the camcorder and basically, you know, recorded the entire Christmas morning. Well, on this disc are fragments of that. The whole process lasted well over an hour and a half. And my son, as well as my wife, Veronica's grandmother, and myself, really indulged Veronica. And you only get to see fragments of that. As I was told, they couldn't play the other parts because of the music.
Hold on,
That's
sir.
okay.
Just answer the questions, okay?
That's okay, sir. In terms of that disc, do we get a better sense of Veronica's personality and how she interacted with you and that part of the family?
You'll see little bits of it, not as much as I would like to see, because to truly convey it.
All right.
I understand.
That's stricken, and the jury will disregard it. You want to play the video, Mr. Brockler?
Do, sir.
1099?
Yes, sir.
Let's go ahead and do that. The jury will disregard that last sentence and will treat it as though it never heard it. Thank you.
Your Honor, forgive me. I don't know that I've moved to admit it yet, but if we could do that first, move to admit People's 1099 in evidence.
Nothing further?
Pursuant to my ruling, it is admitted.
Can you publish that for us, ma'am?
Okay. You want to turn on your stereo? Yeah. Then you can play music, although I think I ought to play it a little more traditional. Okay. You want to? You can go ahead and open your stocking.
Just let it be. Play. Yeah. I'm just going to play it. You haven't even heard the whole thing yet.
Sorry. So bad for her.
Yes, it's not good for dogs at all.
Ooh, a happy banana kind of like a rainbow.
Santa must know what you like, huh?
Oh, who's that? Robin.
Oh.
A robin.
Or a woodpecker. Look at his red head.
Blue jay.
A blue jay.
Oh my God. What? Santa got her that? It has tape on it.
Yeah. Need help? These are the things you have to think about when you wrap them. But just as necessary.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yes.
Oh, you noticed the pretty bow again.
No.
Where's your hat? Santa hat? But Ruffy.
Pretty ribbons,
Did you hear her? Pretty bow. She noticed it.
See? My little minuscule did pull through.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, you like it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, look, Santa still brought me some gifts.
Mr. Bruckler?
Your Honor, can we approach, please?
Forward to May 25th, 2012. Do you recall that day?
Yes, I do.
Now, you, on May 25th, 2012, you ended up attending a continuation ceremony for Veronica as she was making the transition out of kindergarten. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, when you were there, was in part the reason that you were there was because her own mother couldn't be there for it.
Correct.
And did you again bring your camera with you?
I took a little pocket camera with me, not the normal one I use.
When you went to the continuation ceremony and you went inside, Veronica didn't see you right away?
No, she didn't.
Did she seem to you to be looking around for any sort of family that she could find?
Yeah, her eyes, she was surrounded by a lot of children, and she was looking around, but the area, the audience where the families were, she didn't see any faces she recognized.
You were able to capture with that pocket camera that first recognition that family was there at that ceremony. Is that right?
That's correct.
Your Honor, could we have, with the court's permission, previously admitted 4731 published?
Yes, you may.
Is this that picture, sir?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Later in that day, after this continuation ceremony, you took her out to get ice cream?
Yes.
Did you at that time have your bigger, better camera?
No. Throughout the day, I just had the little pocket camera, but I took the photos that I submitted, the one at the ice cream shop.
Now this one, and forgive me, 4730, take a look at that down there. Is that the one we're about to talk about?
Yes.
Is that the picture you took after the continuation ceremony on May the 25th, 2012?
Yes, it is. We took her there to celebrate.
This captures a little bit more of sort of her personality on that day.
Yes.
Your
Yes.
Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to move to admit 4730 into evidence.
Any objection?
Nothing further.
All right, based on my previous rulings, P-TR-4730 is admitted and may be published.
Ma'am, can we see 4730, please? Is this that picture of her wearing that same outfit from that other photograph?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't have anything further, Your Honor.
All right, do you have any questions?
I don't, thank you.
All right, and the jury does not appear to have any questions. May Mr. Sullivan be released from his subpoena?
Yes, sir.
Any objection?
No, sir.
All right, sir, thank you. Call your next witness, please. Mr. Brockler, you may proceed.
Sir, I want to fast forward to May 25th, 2012. Do you recall that day?
Yes, I do.
Now, you, on May 25th, 2012, you ended up attending a continuation ceremony for Veronica as she was making the transition out of kindergarten. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, when you were there, was in part the reason that you were there was because her own mother couldn't be there for it?
Correct.
And did you again bring your camera with you?
I took a little pocket camera with me, not the normal one I use.
When you went to the continuation ceremony and you went inside, Veronica didn't see you right away?
No, she didn't.
Did she seem to you to be looking around for any sort of family that she could find?
Yeah, her eyes, she was surrounded by a lot of children, and she was looking around, but the area, the audience where the families were, she didn't see any faces she recognized.
You were able to capture with that pocket camera that first recognition that family was there at that ceremony. Is that right?
That's correct.
Your Honor, could we have, with the court's permission, previously admitted 4731 published?
Yes, you may.
Is this that picture, sir?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Later in that day, after this continuation ceremony, you took her out to get ice cream?
Yes.
Did you at that time have your bigger, better camera?
No. Throughout the day, I just had the little pocket camera, but I took the photos that I submitted, the one at the ice cream shop.
Now this one, and forgive me, 4730, take a look at that down there. Is that the one we're about to talk about?
Yes.
Is that the picture you took after the continuation ceremony on May the 25th, 2012?
Yes, it is. We took her there to celebrate.
This captures a little bit more of sort of her personality on that day?
Yes.
Your
Yes.
Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to move to admit 4730 into evidence.
Any objection?
Nothing further.
All right, based on my previous rulings, P-TR-4730 is admitted and may be published.
Ma'am, can we see 4730, please? Is this that picture of her wearing that same outfit from that other photograph?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't have anything further, Your Honor.
All right, do you have any questions?
I don't, thank you.
All right, and the jury does not appear to have any questions. May Mr. Sullivan be released from his subpoena?
Yes, sir.
Any objection?
No, sir.
All right, sir, thank you.
You just heard emotional testimony from Robert Sullivan, who is the grandfather of Veronica Moser Sullivan, who is the 6-year-old, the youngest victim of the theater shooting. Just to recap, we are about 15 minutes away from when the verdict is going to be read. It took the jury about 6.5 hours to get to this point, and this is deliberations in the third and final phase of the penalty phase of this portion of the trial. This is where the jury will decide whether or not the defendant gets life in prison without parole or the death penalty. Right now we've got a clip from 7 News reporter Mark Stewart, who is at the Arapahoe County Courthouse waiting for this verdict.
Hello, I'm Mark Stewart at the Arapahoe County Courthouse, where coming up at 5 o'clock Mountain Time, the verdict in the sentencing of the theater shooting trial will be read. Again, it would either be life in prison or the death penalty. Talking to family members and survivors, they want to make it very clear that even though this phase of the ordeal is over, this is something, the pain, the memories, and the trauma is something that they will have to live with for the rest of their lives.
That was 7 News reporter Mark Stewart talking about the impact that this will have for victims for the rest of their lives, not just with the closing of what we hear from the judge about what the jury decides on this verdict. We have 7 News crews who are out at the courthouse speaking with victims as they're arriving to hear this verdict. We heard from Jessica Watts, who is the cousin of Jonica Blanc. Let's take a listen.
All right, so Jessica, as we're waiting to hear what the jury has decided, how are you feeling right now?
Really shaky, really nervous, feeling like it's, been a long time coming. It's 3 years. It's finally starting to come to a close. It's a lot of anticipation, and just ready to kind of close this chapter.
And that was just Jessica Watts, who is the cousin of Jonathan Blanc, who was killed in the theater shooting on July 20th of 2012. Interesting statistic that my colleague 7 News reporter Marshall Zellinger brought up. It has been 1,113 days since the shooting in 2012. Again, we are about 15 minutes away from when the verdict will be read, where we will find out if the defendant gets life in prison or the death penalty. As we prepare and talk about things, we kind of want to lay out some of the facts and what the defendant's life will be like if he is sentenced to the death penalty. We've got some interesting kind of statistics. If Andrew, you want to pull this up, kind of walking through what a day will be like for him if he is sentenced to death. Again, we don't know that at this point, but kind of just going you through the hypotheticals of what we could see from here. So if James Holmes is sentenced to death, he'll serve his time on death row at the Sterling Correctional Facility. Here's a look at what his day would look like. As I mentioned, he would be locked in a cell for 23 hours a day. He'd be allowed 2.5 hours of visitation per week. He would get 3 meals per day in his cell. Now, death row inmates are allowed to exercise and shower 1 hour each day. They can also receive and send mail Monday through Friday. He would also be allowed to have access to a TV, 2 books, newspapers, and magazines in his cell. Some other interesting statistics I want to share with you as well. We've kind of broken down the executions that have taken place in Colorado since 1890. Now, there's been 78 people executed since that time. 45 died by hanging, 32 by lethal gas, and 1 by lethal injection. Again, the jury in the theater shooting trial has reached a verdict in the sentencing phase. It will be read at 5 p.m., which is about 15 minutes away. We will, of course, listen to that and have that for you live here as we get ready for that verdict to be read. We're going to go ahead and continue what we've been showing you throughout the afternoon as we waited for the verdict, and that is testimony from the victims who lost loved ones in the theater shooting, and that was during phase 3 of the trial. Right now, we are going to go ahead and play you a clip of testimony from Sandy Phillips, and she wore her daughter's emerald green scarf on the stand. She said her daughter, Jessica Guy, came to Colorado to pursue training in sports broadcasting.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to publish previously admitted 4686.
That request is granted.
Ma'am. Who's this?
It's my beautiful baby girl, Jessica Redfield Gowie.
Thank you. How many kids do you have? Did you have?
I had 2 Irish twins. My son is 16 months older than my daughter.
Tell us about your son. What's his name?
Jordan Gowie.
When was he born?
July 17th, 1986.
Your daughter, Jessica, did you call her that?
I called her Jessie.
When was she born?
November 27th, 1987.
Is that Thanksgiving?
It's always right around Thanksgiving, yes.
Tell us about her name. How did you name her?
My father's name was Jesse, and he wanted to have a granddaughter, So when I found out that I was having a girl, he was dying of cancer at the time. And so the last thing I could give him as a legacy was to name her after him.
About her middle name, what did you say it was?
Nicole. She went by Redfield, but that's another story. Nicole was her middle name, and that was after her father, her biological father, whose name was Nick.
Is that where the last name came from also, Gowie?
Gowie, yes.
And you said her father.
Mhm.
How old was she when you two got divorced or stopped living?
4 or 5.
And then did you end up raising her with her brother?
Yes, I did.
Now, you're married since?
Yes,
To a man named Lonnie?
yes.
How long you been married?
We've been together for 22 years, going on 22 years.
Was he a fixture in the home as you raised Jordan and Jesse also?
Absolutely, yeah.
For us to understand what has been taken and the impact on that, I need to ask you about your daughter. Tell us about her personality.
She was a little whirlwind, lots of energy, lots of graciousness. She was kind to others, always. She was always popular, always smart, always feisty, very challenging as a parent because she was so smart. So she kept me on my toes.
Hang on. Tell us about that. Give us an example of what you mean by that.
Well, as girls become teenagers, they can be a handful, and Jessie certainly was. And she would get very angry with us, and she'd go up to her room and slam her door. And Lonnie told her, if you slam your door again, we're going to take the door off the hinges. And she, of course, slammed the door again, and he went up with a hammer and chisel and took the door off. And she got angrier and went up and slammed the bathroom door and lost the bathroom door too. So
Awkward.
took 3 weeks for her to get them back too. So, but that's, she challenged us all the time. And you couldn't help but be charmed by her. So it was very difficult to stay firm.
To understand that, as you describe it, is that very different from your son?
Oh, extremely, yes. We called Jessie Messy Jessie because she couldn't seem to clean her room and couldn't seem to find the closet for her clothes. And my son was just the opposite, extremely neat, tidy, orderly.
Was she, the way you've described her, was she always, if this is the wrong term, forgive me, strong-headed, strong-willed?
Extremely so, yes. She knew when she made up her mind to do something, she would get it done. And we used to say that she was like a dog with a bone. When she got her teeth into something, you weren't going to change her way.
Has she always been, and we know because we've seen the picture of her with the microphone, and we've heard a little bit, she always been comfortable, performing may not be the right word either, but in that leadership out front sort of place?
Yes, absolutely. There was a time in nursery school that they were getting ready for their Christmas
Your Honor, I'm
performance.
going to object under 403 and due process and 401.
Overruled. This is relevant because it goes to her personality.
Thank you.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Anyway, they were having a Christmas pageant, so to speak, and they had 2 songs that her class was supposed to sing, and they marched down the aisle and they sat down on the stairs of the altar, and the teacher was supposed to have them all stand up at one time and begin to sing, and the teacher went like this, and she was the only one that stood up and proceeded to sing a solo. And when it was over, the church kind of erupted because it was pretty adorable, if I say so myself. And we commented that she was like a little shooting star. She just went out and did what she thought was right, and she kind of stole the show.
She carried that with her till the end.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Now, I am going to want to talk to you about sort of where she was going with her life. But first I want to ask you about her relationship with her brother. What kind of relationship could she have with him despite sort of these differences in personality?
They were siblings. There was certainly a rivalry. He was the boy, she was the girl. They fought like cats and dogs, but they loved each other dearly. And my son has not done well since she was murdered.
Where did you raise your family?
Most of the time in San Antonio, Texas.
Did they go to junior high, high school, all that together?
Yes, yeah.
What was your daughter's relationship like with Lonnie?
Well, his most prized picture is a picture that he has of her sitting in his lap when she was 5, and she's sound asleep on his shoulder, and he's sound asleep in the chair. And I took the picture, and it kind of expresses how they were with each other. There was a safety there that they both shared. She loved him dearly. She called him Bubba, and he called her Babette. And she always knew when she was in trouble if he wasn't calling her Babette. If he referred to her by Jessie or Jessica, she knew that she had done something pretty bad.
Leading up to college and what brought her out here, and we'll talk about that. But what was your relationship like with your daughter?
As a teenage girl, we were not close because I was the mom, and she would try to manipulate, and I wouldn't let her, and she didn't like that much. But I told her one time, I said, I'm not supposed to be your friend right now. I'm your mother, but we'll be friends when you become an adult. And it had become that way. And she used to tell her friends that I was her best friend. She planned at least two surprise parties for my birthday, and invited her friends to attend. So I was very blessed. We had a very, very lovely, loving relationship.
What did Jessie tell you she wanted to be as she was growing up?
Growing up, it was all over the place. She couldn't seem to find her niche, but she was always a very good writer, and that started to express itself in high school. And when she went off to college, she thought she wanted to go into psychology because she had a very big heart and she wanted to help other people who were going through a difficult time. But after one semester of that, she realized, no, this isn't what I want to do, and came home and said, I want to go into sports broadcasting and journalism. And it was, well, that's what you want to do. Go do it. You're an excellent writer, so go make it happen.
Look, to understand sort of her, I guess, the strong-willed nature and her initiative, what did she do to try to put herself in a position to achieve that?
Well, again, dog with the bone. She got an internship at a local station in San Antonio, started networking very quickly, learned everything she could about hockey, and...
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
Is this still in San Antonio?
This is still in San Antonio. Hockey, I know. There was a team there that fed into the National Hockey League called the Rampage, and she got hooked. I mean, really got hooked. It was such a fast-paced game, and not a lot of women in it. So she saw an opportunity and said, I love this sport. There aren't a lot of women in it. I can make room here, and did.
And how does that get her from San Antonio up here with us?
She came to me at Christmas time in 2011. No, excuse me, 2010. And brought a sports newscaster with her over to the house that we had met several times. And I went, okay, something's up. And she said, I'm not getting the kind of education that I really need at UTSA. I really want to go into broadcasting. And there's a school in Denver that...
Please be seated. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the case of the people of the state of Colorado versus James Egan Holmes, case number 12 CR 1522. The record should reflect that Mr. Holmes is present with his attorneys, Mr. King, Ms. Brady, Ms. Higgs, Ms. Spengler, and Ms. Nelson, and the people are represented by Mr. Brockler, Mr. Orman, Ms. Pearson, Ms. Tish McGuire, Mr. Edson, and that's it, no Mr. Edwards. Okay, we are outside the presence of the jury. At approximately 2 o'clock this afternoon, the jury sent out a note that I have marked as juror question number 3 during phase 3 deliberations. It reads as follows. The jurors have completed all of the verdict forms, and it appears to be signed by the foreperson. Are the parties ready for the jury, Mr. Brockler?
Yes, sir, we are.
Ms. Brady? Okay, let's bring in the jury. Actually, before you do that, I have an advisement for the spectators. As you know, this is a public trial, and I want everyone to be welcome and comfortable here. That is important. For that,
as you can see, it appears we're having some technical difficulties in regards to the reading of the verdict. The judge has, it sounds like we've got that back. Let's go ahead and take it live. Oh, no, we do not have that. I apologize. We are having some technical difficulties. We are waiting to hear the verdict. The jury deliberated for about 6.5 hours. They have come to a decision in phase 3 of the trial. This is in the sentencing phase. Looks like we do have that feedback live. Let's take it.
responsibility to defend and uphold the authority and dignity final sentencing. So if you want to leave, now would be the time to do it, or you have to wait until the reading of the verdict has been completed. One last thing before I bring in the jurors. Juror number 661, who is an alternate, is going to be watching the proceedings from a separate room, from an overflow room, because she's ill. Is that okay with the parties?
It is, Your Honor.
Okay, let's bring in the alternates first, please. Okay, let's bring in the deliberating jurors now, please. Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect that all of the jurors are now present in the courtroom. Mr. Foreperson, it's my understanding that the jury has completed all of the final sentencing verdict forms. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Would you please hand all of those to one of my bailiffs? Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gerlings. Thank you. Would the defendant please stand for the reading of the final sentencing verdict forms? Final sentencing verdict form, count 1, murder in the first degree after deliberation. Jonathan Blanc, we the jury do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we the jury understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 2, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Alexander Boyk. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 3, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Jesse Childress. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 4, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Gordon Cowden. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 5, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Jessica Gowie. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 6, murder in the first degree after deliberation, John Larimer. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 7, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Matthew McQuinn. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 8, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Michaela Medek. we, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 9, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Veronica Moser Sullivan. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 10, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Alex Sullivan. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 11, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Alexander Teves. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 12, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Rebecca Wingo. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 13, murder in the first degree extreme indifference, Jonathan Blanc. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 14, murder in the first degree extreme indifference, Alexander Boyk. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 15, murder in the first degree extreme indifference, Jesse Childress. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 16, murder in the first degree extreme indifference, Gordon Cowden. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 17, murder in the first degree extreme indifference, Jessica Gowie. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 18, murder in the first degree extreme indifference, John Larimer. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 19, murder in the first degree extreme indifference, Matthew McQuinn. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 20, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Michaela Medek. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 21, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Veronica Moser Sullivan. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 22, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Alex Sullivan. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 23, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Alexander Teves. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 24, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Rebecca Wingo. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. You may be seated. Mr. Bruckler, would you ask me to poll the jury? Yes.
Sir.
Ms. Brady, would you like me to poll the jury? Okay, thank you. Members of the jury, you have now completed your duties as jurors in this case and are discharged with the thanks of the court. All of the advisements that I've been giving you for months related to your conduct when you're not here in the courtroom no longer apply. The orders that I have entered for your protection during the trial will no longer apply either. I don't have the authority to continue those orders. The question may arise whether you may now discuss this case with the lawyers, the defendant, the media, other persons involved in the case, or anyone else. For your guidance, the court instructs you that whether you talk to anyone is entirely your own individual decision. It is proper for others to discuss the case with you, and you may talk with them, but you need not. If you talk to them, you may tell them as much or as little about your deliberations or the facts that influence your decision. That is up to you. If any person persists in discussing the case over your objection, or if anyone becomes critical of your service either before or after any discussion has begun, that would be improper, and I ask that you please report that to me. Nobody should ever become critical of your service, and nobody should persist in discussing with you the trial or your juror service if you're saying to them that you do not want to discuss it. And if people persist in trying to talk to you over your objection, then that would be improper, and you need to let me know that. Before I release you, I want to thank you very much for your service. I want to acknowledge the sacrifice that each and every one of you has made. And it's not only the deliberating jurors, but each and every one of you. You've been here since April, and actually you came here sometime in January for the first time. You came again at some point between January and April 27 for your individual jury selection session. And then, of course, you've been here since April 27, just about every day. You all have put your lives on hold to do this. I don't know if you remember, but right before group jury selection, I spoke to you about the importance of the jury trial system to our democracy. And here's what I said. I said the democracy that we enjoy in this nation could not survive without trial by jury. Trial by jury is an indispensable part of our system of justice, and consequently is a cornerstone of our democracy and the freedom and justice that are inherent in that democracy. Our founding fathers held the right to trial by jury in such high esteem that they actually incorporated trial by jury within the Constitution. Our founding fathers understood that trial by jury is a vital component of a government that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. And without you and your willingness to do this, to make the sacrifice to serve on this jury trial, for such a lengthy period of time and to do all the difficult things that I asked of you throughout is commendable. And without what you've done is commendable, and without you, we couldn't have the system of justice that we have, and we could not have the democracy that we have. So kudos to all of you, and my thanks to all of you. I'm going to plan to stop in and say hello to you before you leave, and so I'm going to ask that you wait for me for just a moment, okay? But I did want to take the time to acknowledge the sacrifices that you've made and to thank you for your service. Is there anything else on behalf of the people before I release the jury?
Thank you.
Is there anything else on behalf of the defense? All right. All right, members of the jury, I am going to release you at this time. Please wait for me, and I'm going to stop in just a few minutes and say hello and thank you personally for your service. Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect that all of the jurors have exited the courtroom. I think that the next order of business is to schedule a sentencing hearing so that I can formally sentence the defendant on all the counts. When would the people like to do that?
August 17th, Your Honor.
Does August 17 work for the defense? While the defense is discussing it, do the people have any idea right now how long the sentencing hearing will take?
3 days.
3 days? Okay. All right, is there another date?
As soon as possible, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay. Can you make it next week? Is that okay with the people?
That's the soonest, Your Honor, yes.
Is that the soonest you can, Mr. King? Okay, so what date, what's the soonest date when you're available?
Whatever that Monday is.
I think that's the 24th.
For all dates that we were supposed to be available for trial, Your Honor, yeah.
August 24, 25, and 26, is that what we're talking about?
That's fine for the people, Your Honor. Also, if the court would, once it picks a date, whatever date that is, if the court would let us know when it would like the victim impact statements to be submitted.
As soon as possible would be great, so that I can review them in advance, please. Ms. Brady?
24th.
August 24, 25, and 26. Does that work for us, Ms. Robinson? Okay, August 24, 25, and 26. Should we say 8:40 to keep with the start time that we've had? Okay, 8:40 in the morning, August 24, August 25, and August 26. In terms of the exhibits, do the people intend to retrieve the exhibits after they submit photographs of them pursuant to the policy that's in place?
That's been our plan, Your Honor.
Okay, is the defense planning on doing the same thing with its exhibits? I think that's the policy, and I think we should follow the same policy, so.
I think some of the defense exhibits may have been items collected by the police, and our preference would be that the police department keep those in custody and they don't go to the defense counsel.
Okay, we'll do it that way. Thank you. I know that there are a lot of members of the media here. Let me just mention that All of my orders related to jurors expire now that I have discharged the jurors. However, Order C-127, which is related to the quorum, remains in effect. That's related to courthouse provisions in terms of where you can have cameras, where you can take pictures, that kind of thing. Those will remain in effect at least through the sentencing hearing, August 24, 25, and 26. All right? Is there anything else on behalf of the people at this time, Mr. Brockler? Yes, you may. You want this on the record, Mr. Brockler?
Yes.
All right, is there anything else at this time on behalf of the people, Mr. Brady? Ms. Brady?
Not for me either, Your Honor.
Okay, so Mr. Brocker saying no and Ms. Brady saying no. Thank you. All right, that will conclude the proceedings until August 24 at 8:40 in the morning. The court will be in recess. Thanks, everyone.
You've just heard from the judge there that the defendant, James Holmes, will spend his life in prison without parole. As you heard, he read all 24 counts. The first 13 were murder counts, and then the following were in regards to extreme indifference. And in every single count, you heard the judge say that the jury was unable to have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on any of the 24 counts. So as a result, the defendant, James Holmes, will spend life in prison without parole. That means essentially that at this point, the case moves forward. There will not be the appeal process that we would have seen with the death penalty. It's unclear exactly which facility he will be housed in. We do know that the other additional 140 attempted murder charges, he will be sentenced for those on August 24th. That will last for 3 days. At that point, then the case really ends. At that point, he will spend his life in prison without parole. There will not be the appeals process. Goes to show how difficult it is to impose the death penalty, to have a jury unanimously decide, and that is what is needed in order to impose a death penalty sentence. So that's the very latest from the Arapahoe County Courthouse. We're going to go ahead and replay the reading of the verdict for you again so you can hear it in its entirety.
Would the defendant please stand for the reading of the final sentencing verdict forms? Final sentencing verdict form, count 1, murder in the first degree after deliberation. Jonathan Blanc, we the jury do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we the jury understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 2, murder in the first degree. After deliberation, Alexander Boyk. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form count 3, murder in the first degree. After deliberation, Jesse Childress. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form count 4, murder in the first degree. After deliberation, Gordon Cowden. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form count 5, murder in the first degree. After deliberation, Jessica Gowie. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form count 6, murder in the first degree. After deliberation, John Larimer. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form count 7, murder in the first degree. After deliberation, Matthew McQuinn. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form count 8, murder in the first degree. After deliberation, Michaela Medek. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form count 9, murder in the first degree. After deliberation, Veronica Moser Sullivan. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form count 10, murder in the first degree. After deliberation, Alex Sullivan. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form count 11, murder in the first degree. After deliberation, Alexander Teves. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form count 12, murder in the first degree. After deliberation, Rebecca Wingo. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form count 13, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Jonathan Blanc. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form count 14, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Alexander Boyk. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form count 15, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Jesse Childress. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 16, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Gordon Cowden. We, the jury, do not have a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 17, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Jessica Gowie. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 18, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, John Larimer. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 19, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Matthew McQuinn. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 20, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Michaela Medek. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 21, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Veronica Moser Sullivan. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole.
Obviously here a really emotional time for these victims and their family members, the survivors who are coming out of the courthouse learning that James Holmes did not get the death penalty, that it was life in prison without parole. Reporting live, Jacqueline Allen, 7 News.
This is video above the Arapahoe County Courthouse right now. Obviously the big question here, lots of victims' families were here for this verdict. What is their takeaway from this, from the jury not being able to come to a unanimous decision and sentencing the defendant to life in prison essentially without parole by not having a decision in either of the 24 counts? From here we will have the sentencing phase for the other 140 counts for the attempted murder charges, but this really was the final phase of the penalty phase, the third phase, and really the final end of the fourth deliberations that we saw in the trial that began many months ago. Joined now with my colleague Phil. Talk about what your takeaway is from this.
Well, for us who've been here for so long, and I know you grew up in Colorado, and no disparagement intended, but for those of us who've been working on this story for 3 years, I don't think there's any way we could have come out of this and not been speechless the way that we are now. And I know that you have your own family and personal ties to this state, and that's another layer added to that someone who came from out of state, like myself, I don't have. But after 3 years of work on this, whatever logo we put up in this screen, and pull the curtain back, we prepared exhaustively for any possibility at every stage of this. Whatever we put in this screen, there's no way that it comes out and doesn't feel draining and exhausting and leave us speechless.
I think you said it right.
Yeah.
It's something, as someone who did grow up here, I mean, it's become a part of the community in not a good way, but this doesn't make it go away. It's always going to be something, especially for the victims' families. This is not necessarily closure, it's just the end of this long process. And as you said, no matter what we put up there, it's still somewhat shocking to hear, the final decision.
Absolutely. And then the other thing about all of this is there is an obvious political ramification, at least potentially, in all of this. And I'm going to pause that thought for a second, because you're looking now at Air Tracker 7, and there's a group, and I can't see from where I'm sitting, but what we're looking at
some of the victims' families, people leaving the courtroom after hearing the verdict.
Certainly, and so you can see the cameras at the bottom of the screen, Andrew, if you drop that graphic for a second, those cameras are in the allowable interview area. We are not allowed to cross that circle. We are not allowed to approach. But if we see someone approach, like you saw earlier, we only got a split second with Jacqueline's video, but we're going to do our very best to bring those items up to you live.
I think that, it's the big question, as you said. I mean, I think no matter what, this is a hard day for the victims' families, but what their thoughts are on the decision by the jurors here.
Absolutely, and for the community of Aurora and Arapahoe County, which obviously consists of so much more than just Aurora.
Yes.
But interestingly, Arapahoe County, does this signal a political change in Arapahoe County? It has, a conservative district attorney who led this charge, and he was successful at every stage except for this one, the death penalty stage. And that's notable because Arapahoe County is the only county with people awaiting the death penalty in the state of Colorado, and there's 3 of them. Does this signal some kind of change, and if so, what does that mean? And that's a question that we're going to have to answer in the days to come.
Absolutely, and I think it raises the questions, just as you said, of how difficult it is, and it appears to be, to have a guilty death penalty verdict. I mean, you've got to have the unanimous decision, which they weren't able to come to.
It's a very difficult process, and I know we're working on getting Dan Recht up here to take this microphone away from me and provide, someone who's got a degree in all of this and all of this process, the perspective, yes. But this is such a rare thing, to be able to have a decision without unanimity is incredibly uncommon, and nothing that we've seen anywhere else in this case could possibly compare to this. In some ways, and this is a question I'd want to ask Dan, does it mean that after a certain period of time they gave up, or did they, as the judge told them to in those instructions, did they properly respect each other? And someone stood fast. And what does it mean with that video they requested?
I was just going to say, I mean, we all we don't know. Hopefully we will learn, if the jurors are willing to speak about their deliberations.
Right.
But what was the role of that video, and was it to sway someone that it didn't, they weren't able to?
Right.
Or did it have a different purpose? Right. I mean, what was the purpose of playing that video that they wanted to see?
Absolutely, and in a fascinating twist, we may never know who was the holdout, or whether it was multiple holdouts, because only the foreman has to sign on that line. It's not like the unanimous death penalty verdict where they all have to pen their names. We may never know if they're not willing to say, and it certainly is their prerogative to decide, but if they decide never to tell us, we will never know who made that, who held out, who dissented on this decision.
And we heard the judge say that the jurors can speak with the media if they choose, but it is their choice. I mean, you know more of the process as far as how that works.
Yes, exactly right. The media officers of the court, who have been incredibly helpful to all of us throughout this process, making sure we understand all of the rules and such, they've got the responsibility of finding out who's going to talk. And also, I should say, probably in conjunction with the representatives of the district attorney's office, and somebody's going to have to sit them down and ask that question. Certainly, we are allowed now to approach them if they're willing, and like the judge said, we're allowed to ask them if they're willing to talk with us, but we can't force the issue. And as far as getting them all to sit down at once, if it's going to happen, or if any group of them is going to sit down, it's going to be with the help of those court spokespeople, and we just don't have an answer for that yet. And that's why you and I are here babbling, because we're hoping that we can get
some of those answers and some of that. What was, who was it one? Was it two? I mean, we don't know.
Right.
We don't have any idea at this point. And I think in talking with our legal expert, Dan Recht, just in that he had said, in his opinion, based on what he heard from the 6.5 hours that the jury deliberated, that was, in his opinion, short and not in favor of the defense. But obviously, in this case, they weren't able to come to a decision in that 6.5 hours that they felt they weren't going to be able to come to a unanimous decision no matter how much more time. I mean, I think it's fair to assume that at this point.
That's exactly right. And gosh, imagine being a fly on the wall.
I
mean,
right.
we have been a fly on the wall throughout this situation there in the Arapahoe County Courthouse that everyone's looking at right now. But gosh, I mean, so many things have changed and evolved, and we've seen processes that we've never witnessed before. It's incredible. And I mean, look at the courthouse. That whole section in the center with the entrance and the security and the tunnels, when this case started, none of that was there. It's all been, things
so
have
much change because of
partly, I mean,
this trial. I mean,
and
just
the
like you
courtroom,
mentioned where we couldn't be, I mean, there was very specific.
The courtroom that we had this trial in was remodeled in part because they knew how many people would want to be in the gallery for this. The process has been wildly, breathtakingly large, and not to mention, you know, all of us, all of our competitors and coworkers and the members of the media consortium who put this together. There's been a lot that went into this, and so like I said before, I just can't get over, I think I would have felt as tired and as flabbergasted now no matter what the decision was.
Right. No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's had an impact on us all. I mean, it's been several months, and coming, it's, you know, like you said, we prepared for whatever the decision would be, and finding out what it is, that it's not relief, it's just almost like, okay, you know, we have a decision that now the community and everyone will have to move forward with.
And it doesn't change all of those horrible stories that we heard, especially over the last few days, but really over the last 15 weeks. It doesn't, I mean, I can't put myself in their shoes, but I can't imagine how they must, all the people affected by this case directly,
have to feel.
Must feel, but no matter what, their losses or their injuries would still be there, and they'd still be, you know, making their ways bravely through that.
I mean, you have to hope this gives some closure, but at the same time, as you mentioned, it's, you know, it doesn't go away. They are forever impacted by the events of that night on July 20th, 2012.
Right.
And I mean, do you think we'll hear from the district attorney or the defense today, or is that really to be seen? I mean, I know they've still got the sentencing.
It's funny, I don't think George Brockler has tweeted since that time he was called out
got in trouble
in court.
Had to delete it, and
I don't think he's tweeted since then, and will he come forward and speak? I mean, he's never been shy of the media. He's worked with us. He's been, you know, a conservative legal analyst on our air on election night before. But will he talk about this case, given all that he's invested in it? I don't know. We literally haven't been able to ask him until this point. And actually, the truth is, since there's still a hearing to come, we might.
I was going to say, can he speak? Like, that's what I was.
You know, I think he'd still be under the gag order. Now that I take myself back a step, I think he'd still be under the gag order for this case.
Until that sentencing on August 24th.
Or any other attorneys. Right, August 24th. So we're going to come back to the court on August 24th, and
that's when we'll hear the additional 140 attempted murder charges that were not addressed in this penalty phase.
So it sounds like that's going to be a 3-day process, Jennifer. It sounds like there's going to be some that are either recorded or written statements, and those will be submitted to the judge, and then there'll also be some in-person statements. And the truth is, just like throughout this trial, we've got a lot of guesswork. We don't know which will occur when. So as I'm talking to you, I've gotten a note that at this point in time, we have no signals from anyone in the field with interviewees to speak with. So I think, Andrew, if you would, let's go back to the beginning of this decision, and at that point we can have a moment. We'll play this again. The decision video is 10 or 11 minutes long. It'll give us a chance to talk to our crews in the field and see if we can get any live information, interviews
sound from the victims reacting to this verdict.
So let's listen to that, and we'll do that.
Would the defendant please stand for the reading of the final sentencing verdict forms? Final sentencing verdict form, count 1, murder in the first degree after deliberation. Jonathan Blanc, we the jury do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we the jury understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 2, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Alexander Boyk. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 3, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Jesse Childress. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 4, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Gordon Cowden. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 5, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Jessica Gowie. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 6, murder in the first degree after deliberation, John Larimer. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 7, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Matthew McQuinn. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 8, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Michaela Medek. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 9, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Veronica Moser Sullivan. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 10, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Alex Sullivan. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 11, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Alexander Teebs. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 12, murder in the first degree after deliberation, Rebecca Wingo. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 13, murder in the first degree extreme indifference, Jonathan Blanc. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 14, murder in the first degree extreme indifference, Alexander Boyk. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 15, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Jesse Childress. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 16, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Gordon Cowden. We, the jury, do not have a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 17, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Jessica Gowie. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 18, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, John Larimer. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 19, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Matthew McQuinn. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 20, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Michaela Medek. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 21, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Veronica Moser Sullivan. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 22, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Alex Sullivan. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 23, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Alexander Teves. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. Final sentencing verdict form, count 24, murder in the first degree, extreme indifference, Rebecca Wingo. We, the jury, do not have a unanimous final sentencing verdict on this count, and we, the jury, understand that as a result, the court will impose a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on this count. You may be seated. Mr. Bruckler, would you ask me to poll the jury? Yes.
Sir.
Ms. Brady, would you like me to poll the jury? Okay, thank you. Members of the jury, you have now completed your duties as jurors in this case and are discharged with the thanks of the court. All of the advisements that I've been giving you for months related to your conduct when you're not here in the courtroom no longer apply. The orders that I have entered for your protection during the trial will no longer apply either. I don't have the authority to continue those orders. The question may arise whether you may now discuss this case with the lawyers, the defendant, the media, other persons involved in the case, or anyone else for your guidance. The court instructs you that whether you talk to anyone is entirely your own individual decision. It is proper for others to discuss the case with you and you may talk with them, but you need not. If you talk to them, you may tell them as much or as little about your deliberations or the facts that influence your decision. That is up to you. If any person persists in discussing the case over your objection, or if anyone becomes critical of your service either before or after any discussion has begun, that would be improper, and I ask that you please report that to me. Nobody should ever become critical of your service, and nobody should persist in discussing with you the trial or your juror service if you're saying to them that you do not want to discuss it. And if people persist in trying to talk to you over your objection, then that would be improper, and you need to let me know that.
Heard Judge Carlos Zamora wrapping up reading the verdict, again finding that jurors were unable to make a unanimous decision on all 24 counts, leading the defendant to serve a life sentence in prison without parole. Now, I do want to kind of follow up. We've just gotten some information that came in regards to where does James Holmes go next and what is the process from here. We've kind of walked you through what would happen if he did receive the death penalty, but now that he has been sentenced to life in prison without parole, basically, like all offenders entering the Colorado Department of Corrections, he will first go to a facility in Denver where he will be processed. He will get his uniform, his identification card, go through evaluation for things like medical, dental evaluations, health assessment, basic things that all inmates go through. His assessment will then determine the prison where he will serve his life sentence. So given his acknowledged mental illness, Holmes would be a likely candidate for the Centennial Correctional Facility, which has a residential treatment program for mentally ill offenders. It is located east of Canyon City. The San Carlos Correctional Facility, located on the grounds of the Colorado Mental Health Institute of Pueblo, also provides mental health treatment for male offenders. So it really will depend on that assessment that he gets at the Denver facility that will determine where he will serve his life sentence. That's going to wrap up our coverage here. Thank you for staying with us throughout this whole process. We were, to bring you the live coverage as we read the verdict, but as well as all the coverage that Andrew and my colleagues Phil have done for the last several months as we have followed this trial throughout all of the different phases and sentencing, and to have it all come to a close. If you would like to continue watching our coverage, if you are watching this live stream on your 7 News app or on the denverchannel.com, we do have our 6 o'clock broadcast that is live right now, and you can continue to watch that. Just look for the live video link on the 7 News app or on the denverchannel.com. That will do it for us here. Thank you for watching.